have a sight. He is our strength and our redeemer. And it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osayi Nikituya, Ohio. I see you. Manut, Guam, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Ensemble. Habarigani, Aquaba, Madase, Etese, Jambo, Mimini Kofi, Miniferaku, Katana de Wewe, Bokuto, Bokuka, Wind Rising, Bakwarka, Barakalacha, Mikaba, Anai, Fine, Skeleton to Christ, Mashalake. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. We're grateful and thankful and appreciative for another opportunity to be in front of you one more again. Once again, we give our honor and praise to Yahweh Elohim. We give our praise and honor to him for my wife, the honor for Amma. We give our praise and honor to him for SOC, moderators, ministerial staff, secretary, those who make phone calls, those who do different things behind the scenes, whatever the case might be. We thank you all so much. We appreciate everybody coming in from Thursday Rising Prayer and joining us today for another live session. Today is going to be a Q&A session, and we did receive a few questions already in getting ready for today. So we thank everybody who sent us stuff through Patreon and through other means to make sure that we ask some questions. So we will start with those questions. There is one question that was given that's kind of a doozy, and I will probably, I don't know, we'll see how Holy Spirit leads. I feel like it should probably wait until the end of the session, but I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about praying about it, asking Holy Spirit for guidance, we might start off with it. We'll see. But we have a few different questions, some doozies, some that are repetitive, which are great because that means that we have persons that are trying to catch us, some that are new. There was one that I was trying to answer about the seer, and I still couldn't get that one together for you all. So I know a few of you have been asking me about that seer question. I'm not quite ready to answer that at least entirely. I can answer as far as the word seer, but as far as the specific seer everybody's asking about, we're gonna make sure that I'm gonna make sure that I'm taking my time with that one. So prayerfully, I'll have that for you guys. Maybe even tomorrow or something. I was researching even up until the bell, so to speak. But ding ding, I'm not prepared to come out to the bell swinging at that one, so I'm not going to get knocked out, so to speak. But Tada, Maisha Pachin, Tada, Mishkapak, thank you, family, for being on. Babakasha, you're more than welcome for those who've been being thankful to us for things that we do. And prayerfully, everybody continuing to move in righteousness as far as the word of Yah, as far as SOC, and even as far as our relationship, those who we have a personal relationship with in some way, shape, or form. We're thankful and grateful to be with you all one more again. All right. So before we get too much deeper into today, it looks like it, but I just have to ask as usual because we don't always have perfect reception and everything. So can everybody see and hear me okay? That's something. Down here anyway. Can everybody see and hear me all right? Before we get too much deeper, we start saying shalom and peace to everybody. All righty. Praise y'all. Okay, so it looks like we got YouTube on. Prayerfully you guys can see and hear us. You can hear. All right, cool. So hello. We're going to get ready to say our Bible pledge in a second, and we'll jump right in. Once again, today's Q&A. We do have some questions that have already been sent in for today. That being said, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please let them be known. We're going to do our best to get into them as soon as possible. What does the hoodie say? This is somebody from our camp, or from our group, from our family. They have something called All Jew No Ish. Here's the back of this particular item. Basically, the brand is talking about how there are many persons that believe that just because we look a certain way, therefore we can't be who we actually are as family by bloodline, E1, B1A, E1, B1B, even L2, L3, L4 DNA wise. There's a lot of persons that don't believe that we actually are true Israel and that we actually have facts to back it up. So this one of our brothers has something on here just to as part of the brand that he has, and very great brand, not only for clothing but also for food and some other things that he does. And so yeah, that's what it says. All Jew no ish. So I'm not Jewish. I am actually Jude or Yehovah or Judah or Jew. or Yehudie, if you look up those terms, especially in Portugal and Spain in the 1500s, you'll see exactly who we're talking about. Um, but yeah, that's basically a statement. So that's what it says. All right. That being said, how you doing, Chris? How you doing, Beck? How you doing, Red Lotus? How you doing, Minister Nais? How you doing, Bruder Charlotte, who was the one I was just talking about? Praise God. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? How you doing, Sister Sabrea, Jennifer? And I told a story too while we were on the road right before. Well, we were right outside of Sedona for a couple of days, but before the Passover, before we checked into where we were going to do the event from, um, somebody saw this and they saw one of Brother Jermaine's shirts with the tassels, and both times there was a brother there, Latino brother, but a brother, and he represented himself as one of the branches of one of the tribes. And when he saw it, he was impressed that we would be in that area wearing who we were. So he actually worked in a place that actually made sure that we got a couple of, he took care of us, long story short. We gave us a couple of discounts and made sure that we had everything taken care of we needed to be safe, so, and sound, and have anything and everything we needed. So standing up for who you are is something that yields results, and I'm thankful to the brethren for being obedient to what they've been called to do. How you doing, Pop Hood? Let's see, Majestic. And also, too, Bruder Charlotte, I don't know what's going on. The last few times, and I mean several days in the last 2 weeks, I have tried to come on the live session. So people say this about our live session from time to time, too, so I pray you're not in that area where they're blocking you or whatever, or if we need to start looking at some stuff to make sure that your stuff is coming out and sharing it better. But they I could not find the live at 2:30, at 2:45, at 3 o'clock. That's one of the reasons why I texted you the other day, was just texting you kind of sort of, I texted you about something else, but in my mind I was kind of sort of trying to make sure everything was all right. I know there's a couple of days you told me about that you had to take care of some stuff, but there's been some other days I've tried to come on and haven't found you. So I know there's a little bit of stuff, but just keeping you in prayer, just giving you a heads up that we actually have been trying to send people to support, including myself, try to support. I know yesterday, Tuesday, Monday, I know Friday, Thursday, last week or whatever, was something going on or something, but I tried to support even early in the week. And when you sent me a message saying that you were on, it would not let me, you know how normally it posts when you're on? It wouldn't do that, doesn't give notifications. So just giving you a heads up that you might have some people that are looking for you, and just in case. So we're praying for you. We're going to try to figure out what's going on. I've ultimately do some of the things when people say, why are you doing this, or move to this, or have so many different channels. Sometimes it's because of that too, because they be messing with us. So just giving you a heads up. I hope, you know, that it hasn't affected you, or if you were thinking maybe something's going on, I'm here to let you know there's something going on. I don't know. But how you doing, Sister Jennifer? They did try to say TikTok supposedly has some issues going on, so I don't know. But let's see. Is it Ramalia? Ramalia Edwards? Not sure if I'm saying it correctly. How you doing, Minister Yasab, Ham, MacD, Jetski, Mark, Sister Sabrea, always everybody on all platforms. But thank you so much for being on. How you doing, Sister Sherry? How you doing, Double OG, Triple OG? How you doing, Joy Boy? How you doing, Minister Morel? So yeah, so for those of you, if you can, if you're looking for Bruder Charlie, just make sure you're looking. And if he ends up saying he was on and he wasn't on, if he makes a post about it or something, if you catch it, you know, we would ask the same thing we would ask for ourselves. You know, go on there or in the comments on this thing, at TikTok legal, hey, what's up, usually make them fast enough to get them. One point before we have to, I'm sorry, the thing just fell on me. The wind is picking up, and it just knocked over our devices. I'm sorry, y'all. So, yeah, all right, well, hopefully this will get, I got the devices set up. Unfortunately, the way the wind and everything's moving, I'm going to have to, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Can you guys still hear me? If I set up like this, you guys can't see what I just did, but if I set up like this, can you guys still see and hear me? All right. Is it? Yes, no, maybe so. We're going to get this in no matter what. Yes, Khan. All right. Toda. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to try and do something a little different. So I might not catch the newest comments coming in. So if you guys have questions, comments, or concerns for the day, and I don't catch it right away, just know that I'm trying my best here with the wind. I had to put something in place that's actually blocking my vision on the bottom of the screen. But we should be able to see. I got it set up for the most part. I should be able to see and hear you. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas, Sister Michelle, Sister Knight? All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. Today is Q&A. Q&A, I actually have at least 5 or 6 that you guys sent in during the week. I think some are even from weeks past that I found. And we even have some that are things that I've answered persons one-on-one, but I figure they're actually pretty decent talking points, even if we've talked about them before in the past. Let's bring them up again. So we're going to go ahead and get into that today. Family, let's go ahead. We'll say our Bible pledge, and we shall jump right in. How you doing, Sister Greta? How you doing, Elder Selector Nice? And thank you once again, Elder Selector Nice, for all that you do, especially with prayer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Thursday Rising Prayer. Remember, that's every Thursday, and it comes on your Google Calendar invite. Excuse me. So you should be able to see all the information on there to make sure that you dial in every Thursday, 7 a.m. To 8 a.m. New York time. Alrighty? Okay. Let's go ahead and say our Bible pledge, and we'll jump right in. You can just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For your hush cry is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is God's word. Hashem Yechelach. Amen. Amen. Thank you for love. Appreciate you all once again. Thank you for being on with us. If you do say something and I don't get to it right away, once again, because of my setup today, I'm not seeing everything on the bottom half of my screen if it scrolls up, but I am going to do my best to go through and get back to you. Thank you, moderators, for any help that you guys give in the future with that. So this is the one I was saying I was struggling with. But this was a question, genuine question. It actually came through Patreon. There was a little discussion on Patreon with this and stuff. But I'll go ahead and put this out here. This is admittedly so. I don't believe it to be dangerous, but I know there's persons that this kind of hits, tugs at our heartstrings still. But it was a question. And I did say I will limit the answer to this somewhat outside of Zoom or outside of somewhere that's not a public setting. Because as you guys will hear, once you hear the topic, you'll know what I'm talking about. That being said, though, I will answer the question. So the question was basically asked, I'm going to be careful with it out of respect for each other. The question was basically asked, I guess, that there are, since we had the issue with SOC, where there are persons who say that they don't. Okay, here's it. So we had a situation with SOC where there was some division, persons left, and even some persons since then, about a couple weeks after that, might have left with them and stuff. And so there's been persons who have felt the question that was so kind of a question, kind of not, but it was felt like basically that there's a weird sense of betrayal or sometimes a weird sense of whatever as far as if you going over there to listen to them and then you listen to us over here and this and that or whatever, and how should they feel? Is it betrayal to listen to somebody else? These persons are still even using a lot of the teachings that they were getting from here, from our group, SOC, etc. And then at the same time, are saying that they're not part of it. How do you deal with that? So I will be very careful, as I said, because there's certain things that I said I wouldn't say in public venues, and I won't. But it is a question. It was brought up. I prayed about it, and I thought, okay, or not I thought, forgive me, my thoughts are getting messed up. But, I was thinking about it. The Holy Spirit said, this can be addressed, this shouldn't be addressed. So I'll say this. Just to just put it out front, it's there at the beginning, it's recorded. Anybody who's even mad at us or whatever, they can listen to the recording and blah, blah, and see for themselves exactly what I said. There is no, how can I say this? There is no beef, right? As far as on my end. There's no anger, there's no frustration. I will say this much. I think a lot of persons think that persons got kicked out, which is not the case. I think a lot of persons think still because of what's being said, and I can only go off of what's being said and what's being brought to me. How you doing, Sister Jenna? Right, there's no beef, there's no strife from my end, um, there's no ill will, and until the communication was stopped on their end, I was communicating back even way well after a lot of persons think. So I say all that to say that the same thing I said before, said this even on the Zoom meeting we had that Thursday evening or Saturday, whatever it was, um, or Monday. I think it was a Monday, right? We had a while ago. How you doing, Sister Greta? I'm not wishing ill will on anybody. There was a situation that popped up, and really, long story short, it comes down to this. There's a person that did something and we caught and called them out on it. There's some people that believe that the person did it. There's some persons that don't believe it. A lot of persons that don't believe it are friends with the person, bare minimum, right? Some of them have even quite tighter relationships than what we might just call a friendship. Um, and that seems to be the thing that kind of took it over the edge. Um, there's a lot of things that are truths and facts and context that a lot of persons are missing, including some of the persons that are mad and upset. And my issue was never with the people or even the person who did whatever. I pray that they are doing well and stuff and growing and learning. And if they go somewhere else, and if Yah brings it to where everybody would come back, I have to be obedient to as well. But once again, only one person was actually disciplined in the manner as far as being kicked out, right? Everybody else made a decision to leave of their own free will, and they have the right to do so. Um, if they believe that we did something that's out of pocket, right? They even brought me some scriptures and stuff to try and tell me, and I tried to tell them that's not the context, that's not what actually happened, right? So at that point, if they decide, even without having to the context, even without giving me the right to speak to them, right? Really what happened was we had a meeting that was supposed to be for leadership. They came in the midst of the meeting and not only dressed me down, dressed Elder Ahmed down, dressed the ministerial staff down, but then they also, basically were like kind of SOC is trash, blah, blah, blah. You're trash, you're not a pastor, you're not a shepherd, you're not a leader. Even the texts and conversations we had afterwards were basically more the same. And, they didn't want to necessarily talk stuff through it. It had been a decision had been made. That being said, that's the only issue I have, right? Now, out of respect for them, not even out of respect for SOC, right? But out of respect for them, biblically speaking as well, right? Lawfully speaking, out of respect for them, if they have their own thing going on. I've even told some of the persons who do teachings or do things with them or whatever, and they'll even come back, well, Pastor Kofi, this is what they teach and blah, blah, out of respect for them, what I've said, and they can hear this out of my mouth. You can hear this from my mouth to your ears, from my lips to your ears, right? Out of respect for them even and what they're doing, if they believe us to be that bad, I've even told others, and then, well, not them because they're not talking to me, but I've told others, there's certain things you shouldn't tell me, right? If they believe that we're bad and this and that or whatever, we're out of pocket. So I don't want anybody spying on behalf of them, right? That's not word, right? Well, a person shouldn't come to me, they shouldn't come to them. Sure, but also too, I get it if somebody's saying something against me or whatever, because so I get that. But yeah, you should talk to the persons. You should also, if you have certain things you feel like you need to get from me, you should talk to me, right? That being said, I'll just make it, like I said, I'm trying not to go into certain things outside of Zoom. But the question was asked, and you'll see why it's a spiritual, biblical question in a second, right? But out of respect for them, out of honor for them, right? There are certain things that they want to be done, and if they believe that SOC is a hindrance to it, then I have to respect that, right? So I'm not asking for anybody to stop going to them, because I've said this before. If it's the word, it's the word, right? I've said this before. If my wife and I were having an argument in the middle of the street and I started yelling and some guy who happens to be gay walked up and said, you should respect your wife, stop yelling at her, I wouldn't say, well, you're gay, blah, blah, this and that. I would say, amen, you're right. Why? Because the word says respect your wife. Even if we're not on one accord in our walk, If you give me the law, I obey the law. I don't obey man as much as I obey the law. If I listen to man, I'm listening to man only because he's a vessel for Yah's will and his law. So I'm still in the same place with that. I've never changed on that, right? Like it's the same thing. Yah's will hasn't changed on that. It's the same thing. If they say SOC's bad, if they say anybody under SOC's bad because you're under Pastor Kofi, right? Then whatever they do on their own, if you still want to be with that or whatever, I'm not even trying to say it in a mean way. I'm just being honest, right? Like there's a Paul and Barnabas situation. Paul said you shouldn't be Paul or Barnabas. It's about the word. Even if Paul and Barnabas didn't get along, right? You never heard that, so yeah. Well, I'm just saying there were things that happened in the in the separation of things and things that were said, and even people said I kicked them out and this and that or whatever. So I'm like I said, I haven't been to anything. I'm just going off of the question that was asked. I want to be careful how much I answer, at least in this platform. But once again, it's something that seems to be on people's hearts. It's come up a few times. Somebody asked if we could address some of it in Q&A, so I'm just putting it out here in the beginning. After this, once again, there's certain things that just we should address in person or on Zoom or whatever the case might be, right? But I'm just telling you outright, publicly, I have no ill will towards them. I believe even with most of them, right? Matter of fact, I say everybody except one person, even that one person we just haven't talked, but so I can't speak for them. But even with everybody else, I believe ultimately persons are hopefully, prayerfully, I'm assuming, but I'm prayerful and knowing these persons for as long as I did before whatever happened. I would believe that they want to see Yah's will done ultimately, and so that's what it is. So I say all that to say you shouldn't feel guilty about getting the word if it be the word of Yah. If it be something flagrantly out of pocket, if it be something way crazy like that, then so be it, right? But but I'm just making it a point since somebody asked and they were asking as far as scripturally, like how should they feel about it? Should they feel like a traitor? If you get in the word, you get in the word, right? There's there's stuff like, for example, forget even that group. IUIC, for example, right? I told you some issues I had with them. That being said, some of my brothers and sisters are in IUIC. And if they preach the word, right, my son still learns a lot of stuff through IUIC kid stuff, IUIC children stuff. So, just because I might have issues with some of the brothers and sisters and some of the things that they do, if they give a word that's righteous, we go by the word, right? And that should be everyday life. Our marriages would be better if, look, my wife and I might disagree in this and that or whatever, but what does the word say? The word says boom, boom, boom. Okay, babe, I'm listening to the word, right? So I just want to make that a point. So anything else that you hearing, or anything else that you might not even hear, sometimes it's just if what was it that Brutus say a lot, and I know he's not the first one I heard say this, but he says it a lot. What's said, what's understood doesn't have to be said, but sometimes we can be in situations like this where people feel like because there's unsaid things, therefore there's this weird stuff or whatever. So let me just say outright, once again, and I won't use any more of this platform today to speak on it because I think anything else should be addressed offline. And let me just say, all those things being said about what happened, what it feels like on either side, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I believe that when it comes to the preaching of the word, as far as what I've heard and seen from times past, ever since there's been a disconnect, I've been respectful and said, okay, if you don't want me in your stuff or whatever, I won't show up. Right? I haven't denied anybody a right, by the way, except for one person. Other persons who are doing it, they have had the right to come to whatever they want. They've even tried to show up to some of the stuff on Zoom and things of that nature. And I have not tried to block anybody or stop anybody, this, that, whatever, unless it's certain things that we need to talk about. But once again, that's more stuff offline. But outside of like, hey, there's certain things that need to be done to make sure that we don't go into the same situation we had before, the way that we treated each other in this time, right? That's the only thing that I've said is the way that we treated each other. We cannot do that anymore. We've got to address that. We've got to repent. And if nobody thinks that anybody did anything wrong, and nobody will repent of anything, right? So that's where we are. But as far as the word, if they're given the word, no matter who it is, bless you, right? But you shouldn't feel like you're a traitor or this and that or whatever. I'm just saying on certain things as far as if they believe that Pastor Kofi is a problem, if they believe Senator Christ is a problem, these are things that were said, right? And somebody says, well, I haven't heard those things that are said. this when it gets to the point where if you guys want to talk about it more like in the Zoom meeting and stuff, we can, because yeah, we do have things that were said about you don't smell like the shepherd, blah 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 blah, whatever. You guys have heard all that stuff before. I won't go back through it, but there were things that were said, and so if that's how you feel, then it's disrespectful on my end to say I'm going to show up to your stuff, right? I can try to contact you if you say you don't want to be in contact. Then after a certain point, I'm being disrespectful. So that's basically where it is on that end. If you want to go to their stuff, I'm pretty sure that they're okay with you going. I'm pretty sure that you're okay with you doing these things, whatever, right? But if they're giving you the word, then make sure it's the word. In the same way that you would question or do Q&A with me or would question anybody, hopefully, to make sure, try spirit to see if it's a Belachim. I would hope and pray that you would do that. But you all are adults. I mean, we're the children of Yah. That being said, though, you all are adults. You make adult decisions. If you're getting, what you need spiritually through that, through them, and through their platforms and through whatever, I don't know if they even calling themselves something different or whatever the case might be. I don't know. I'm just saying, if you're getting something through it, and it be of Hakodash, right? Which most of us should be adult enough to know how to try the spirit by the spirit to see if what the word is, or we're studying the word for ourselves. So as long as the stuff is still in the word, I, I don't have any issue with it, right? Like if I can listen to a racist say something and be like, well, I might not like the fact that they're racist, but they're saying something, then how much more so even my brother or my sister I might have a issue with, or a beef here or there with, or something like that, which I don't even have beef. Like I said, if it was beef is like we on it. I'm not giving it that energy. I still pray for them, and I still love them, and I think deep down inside, no matter what's been said, I think they still have love for me, and it's been said as much. Um, and so yeah, so last thing I'll say on that, seriously, last thing, you shouldn't feel guilty. Long story short, even scripturally, there are times when people are at ends. Yehoshua and Peter had an issue, and they had to get it together. Paul and Barnabas had an issue; they had to get it together. Moses and Aaron had issues. Moses and his sister Miriam had issues; they had to get it together, right? So, these things happen with human beings. There could be disagreements. That's what repentance is for. That's what prayer is for. And as I said, I think a few days ago, Holy Spirit didn't tell me to do anything different. So if we were preparing a place like they were going to be there, then it doesn't mean that now that they're gone, we stop preparing the place. If Holy Spirit said prepare the place, prepare the place. And, if there be, which I pray for a lot, when there be reconciliation, right? Reconcile, come on, put on the ring, put on the road, right? Cut the fatted calf, right? But we have, on your way in, we just need to address this one type of thing or whatever, because we have to be family, and that's it. So that's all I have on that. I was thinking about leaving it to the last question, but I was just sitting there. Holy Spirit said, if you forget it, then you kind of tiptoed around it. So for me, that's probably the hardest question, just because I didn't want to be disrespectful or anything. I think we did okay with answering that in a respectful way. Anything else, I would prefer that we maybe do one-on-one, or wait till we have when we do our meeting. We have a Zoom meeting tonight, so if you want to ask more questions about certain things or whatever. But like I said, it's peace over here. I think it's peace over there. And yeah, so that's what I'll leave that. Yeah, we're all flawed creatures. And once again, yeah, I said that was the last thing. Holy Spirit, that's the last thing, right? So anything else, if you have questions, comments, or concerns about it, you can feel free to ask. You can go to them, and please feel free to talk to them and see what their side is or whatever. Feel free, if you don't like what they're saying, telling you, and you feel like you got to come and talk to me about it and address me because you feel like I was wrong, feel free to do that. The door is open. Feel free to talk to ministerial staff if you need to pray. But ultimately, Yah's will is what needs to be done. And so my prayer is just that they're given word, nothing but it, that they're still protected, that they're still being the daughters of Yah they're supposed to be, and the sons of Yah they're supposed to be. And if that's what's going on, you heard it from me, even publicly this time, right? You heard it from me that I have no ill will. I'm not losing any sleep over them doing well. Matter of fact, I pray that they're Matter of fact, I'll tell you, if you want to know my prayers, I pray that they increase. I pray their numbers increase. I pray that they give you out of glory. I pray their children are covered. I pray their finances are taken care of. I pray that they are able to do everything as far as each holy day correctly. And I pray that that they walk in their sovereign call. Those are prayers that I have listed for them on a regular basis. So I'll leave that there. How you doing, Brother Rodney? All right, next question up. And actually, I got to run inside and get a get a charger, or else I'm gonna lose YouTube. But next question up, we'll come right back to it. Let me get a charger for YouTube before we lose y'all real quick. Alrighty. Sorry about that. I thought you guys were charged and ready to go. Apparently, that's not the case. So let me get this charger, or else YouTube's gonna fade away, and we do not want that. So I think the next question that I have, I'm just going off of memory. We didn't have too many questions, so I don't have them written down, so forgive me if I go out of order. But the next question that I had, you said, why would anybody feel like, well, I don't know. If you guys were part of the Patreon conversation, or you saw what we said on Patreon, the person basically was just asking and was feeling some kind of way or whatever, and didn't know, and they feel weird because they feel like they're spying to be able to go from side to side, this and that or whatever. And they shouldn't feel like that. So, but I told them that I would address it and address it in public just so that we could say it was addressed and make sure that everybody feels, you know, positive about it. So that's why. But once again, that was so it was mentioned on Patreon. It's on, the conversation is on there, and at the end of the day, we addressed it publicly, and we gave some scriptural reference as to why the person should feel okay. And I know even the persons didn't use the term traitor. I know that for some, some of you are cool with it and should be. I know others that are like, oh, I feel weird because they left and this and that, and so am I supposed to feel weird about this, blah blah. And ultimately, most of you who've had issues with it, to be honest, we've had personal conversations about it. So I'm not really worried about it in that end, but I'm being obedient. We don't shy away from questions unless they just be something crazy, and the parts that I need to make sure that I'm still protecting not only us, but even those who are not with us, at least in an official capacity, but it's still kingdom. I'll leave that stuff for offline. So, but I did want to, we come on here, we say we'll address the question. The question was asked, and so after prayer and stuff, we found it to be something that we can get into. Right? You said the word says study, then you can come from different places. Okay. I'll leave it there. Right? So yeah, and that was one of the reasons, to be honest, one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant, because then it becomes something else, because everybody looks at it differently for different reasons. And I'm not trying to, I just try to be obedient to what we do. And this is not the, it's been years, but it's not the first, well, I don't know. It's not the first time somebody's asked about the inner workings of us, but we'll leave the rest, as I said, for, if you want to ask more questions in a Zoom meeting, if you want to just call me directly, if you want to talk to them directly, whatever the case might be. But we were obedient with what we were supposed to be with that. And as everybody said, hopefully you heard exactly what I said, because what I said is what I meant. So, prayerfully they're doing well, and pray for them all the time. And that's all I can really tell you outside of, going on a live session. Um, on a live session, that's all I can tell you. So let's see. We had another question about the calendar was next. So we get quite a few of these, and I get because they're confusing. So yeah, okay, amen. So direct should always be the case. Praise God. That's correct. Direct should always be the case, right? Okay, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there because it's yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Praise God. That's why I was thinking about leaving it till later. So, anyways, we'll leave it there. All right. So, I'm sorry. Next question was about the calendar. Okay. So, next question was about the calendar, and the calendar as far as I believe it was Jubilees chapter 1 and Jubilees chapter 2 that was brought up. And it was brought up because I guess so. Actually, hold on. I have the screenshot of the chat. Mm. So well, anyways, so what was brought up is in Jubilees 1 and 2, it speaks of creation. It speaks of the fourth day that the sun, the moon, and the stars were created, and then it starts talking about the sun and how it can be used, to be able to tell time and this and that or whatever. And the person asked, they said that they've been doing like from 6 p.m. in the evening till 5:59 p.m. the next evening as far as their day, right? So. Um, So, so let's see. Yeah, so they were saying from 6 p.m. one day to 5:59 p.m. the next day, and they were saying, looking at the scripture, it seems like there might be it might be saying something different than what we've been going by. How you doing, Prince? How you doing, Sister Deborah? And so, we have a. So, I mean, I don't find. I'm gonna be honest. If the person wants to say who they are and stuff like that, so be it. I didn't ask permission if I could use their name, but if you want to present it, I don't know if I can catch a text. Probably not, unless you do the 202-599-7312 number. But uh, so the so basically, I don't find an issue with the scripture. I think the closest thing I find is that it talks about the sun and sun a lot in the very next verse. So after, I believe in Jubilees chapter 1, where it talks about the fourth day, Yom Dalet, that the sun, the moon, and the stars were created. Then after that, the next verse starts talking a lot about the sun. So maybe there's confusion there. Okay. You said please read the scripture. Okay, so once again, okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so let's see. So once again in Jubilees chapter 1 and chapter 2, the scripture's there. But if we want to go ahead and say, I guess we might not be able to open up our Bible. All right, so I think we got YouTube back up prayerfully. I apologize. I don't know what's going on with that stuff, but it looks like we might have you guys together. So I'm going to try and read here. Let's see, Jubilees chapter 2, verse 8, starting at verse 8, reads as follows. It says, and on the fourth day, on Yom Dalet, he, Elohim Shaddai, created the sun and the moon and the stars, and set them in the Lakwaya, or what you call the firmament, the Lakwaya Shamayam, to give light upon Aratz, all the earth, and to rule over the day and night, and divide the light from the darkness. Right? And Yahweh, or and Yahweh, or and Yahuwah, or and Yahweh, right? And Yahweh appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Shabbats, and for the months, and for the feasts, and for years, and for Shabbats of years, and for jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. And it divides, this is verse 10, and it divides the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, and all things may prosper which shoot and grow on earth. These three kinds he made on the fourth day. Okay, so that's Jubilees, I believe it's chapter 1, verses 8 through 10. Okay, um, Jubilees chapter 8, I'm sorry, Jubilees chapter 1, excuse me, verses 8 through 10. All right. So in reading this, what I was trying to say is, I believe in verse 9, I believe the issue might be that we are seeing that it starts talking about the sun. And so since the sun is spoken of, we go, okay, then the evening to the rising can't be the day. Okay, Jubilees 2:9 and Jubilees 2:21. All right, hold on one second. So that was Jubilees 2. I'm sorry, Jubilees 2:9, Jubilees 2:21 is the other one. So when we read verse 21, I'm sorry, down here, it says, and thus he created them therein a sign in accordance with which they should keep Shabbat with us on the seventh day. Okay? To eat and to drink and to bless him, or Barak Yahweh, or Barak Elohim, who has created all things as he has barak and sanctified, or set it apart unto himself, a peculiar people above all peoples, and they should keep Shabbat together with us. So let's read a little bit before, like we did a little bit after with the other verses. Verse 19, and he said, behold, pay attention, I will separate unto myself a people from among all peoples, all the peoples, so a nation from all the nations, and these shall keep Shabbat, Yom, or keep the day of Shabbat. And I will sanctify them, I will set them apart unto myself as my nation, as my people, and I will barak them, as I have sanctified the Shabbat day, and sanctify it unto myself. Even so will I bless them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their sovereign ruler. Verse 20, and I have chosen the seed of Jacob, or the seed of Jacob, from amongst all that I have seen, and have written him down as my firstborn son, and have sanctified him unto myself forever and ever. And I will teach them the Shabbat day, that they may keep Shabbat thereon from all work. Or remember that word work there as well, same thing in Genesis, is the word occupation, right? So on that day, whatever your occupation is, right, that you have, that occupation which you rest. When it says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, that Yahweh rested, that word, when he rested, and when he rested from work, right, that word work is talking about your occupation, right? To rest is to rest from your occupation, okay? All right. Now here we go, verse 21. And thus he created therein a sign in accordance with which they should keep Shabbat with us on the seventh day, to eat and to drink and to bless him who has created all things, as he has blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep Shabbat together with us. And he caused his commandments to ascend as a sweet savor, right? As a sweet savor, or even as a sweet savior, but as a sweet savor, acceptable before him all the days. Okay? All right. So that's specifically as far as that question. I don't know. Are there other? So you said the evening was mandated by man? Well, that sounds like it until you, once again, if you're using this scripture and you're going with Genesis, Genesis says the evening to the rising is the first day. Now, what we're hearing, once again, and once again, this to each their own, because it's kind of a repetitive thing. I think so I know there's a bunch of teachings. This is one of the things, first of all, there's a lot of different teachings. I know the 364-day teaching, which is saying go 7 days a week, 7 days a week, 7 days a week, 7 days a week. The Bible doesn't go by 7 days a week, 7 days a week with no end. The Bible doesn't go by Sunday through Saturday. Sunday through Saturday is made by somebody else. And Sunday has to do with the worship of the sun, the worship of the moon, the worship of Tivs, the worship of Odin, the worship of Thor, the worship of Frida, the worship of Saturn. Right? So if we're using that, we have to recognize that. Now, somebody says, well, we're going back to Kemet. And Kemet, they still didn't have 364 days. They actually had 360 days, which means they still didn't go by 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. Right? If you're going by Cush, who also were persons who got the Israelite calendar, they didn't go by 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. So what we're doing is mixing and matching a bunch of different teachings. Right? It's right. Like if we're gonna be holy, you got to keep it whole. Yes, the sun does help because the sun helps us to know where you are in the day, just like the moon helps you to know where you are in the month, right? So the sun, of course, is going to tell you in verse 9 where you are in the oh, the sun is doing this now. The sun is this big. The sun is this far away. Sure, those things are there, right? The sun, the moon, and by the way, we don't even talk about the stars, which tell you a bunch as well, where you are as well, right? And we usually use somebody else's culture. So what I'm saying is this, like, I get where persons are coming from. I can even respect it. I can even see what's going on. I even go back and look at, like, somebody will say, well, this person teaching this person teaching this. I try my best as much as I can to go to them. I haven't seen the teaching yet that shows me that literally, even in your Bible, your Chashrai, Passover starts at 6, and you count the watches or the hours, and you'll see the 2 hour periods, and it'll tell you that he's still hanging on the top in the rising, not in the evening, in the rising. Why? Because the day started when Passover, when Pasach started. So it's a different context, it's a different thing contextually. It's a different mindset, right? But there's persons who are trying to take a lot of, and here's another thing. Persons don't want to talk about this, but the 7 day a week calendar and even the 365-day week, that's actually more of a not even a Greco-Roman thing, but a Roman Catholic thing, right? So when we're looking at this, we're actually using a lot of Roman Catholicism based off of, I forget the word that I'm looking for, solar something, and it's made by Nicholas Copernicus, who he himself was offed and on his deathbed, couldn't do anything, but somehow his book came out, and in the beginning of the introduction of his book, he says, yeah, they want me to put this out, but I don't feel comfortable with this. You can look at what Martin Luther talked about as well. That was part of their arguments that he had with them, is that, hey, why are we trying to change, creation, or change the way that it's always been? We already changed it to a 7 day week process. Now we're trying to change it to where Shabbat's not even on, or the day for Mass for them is not even on their Saturday, but now it's going to be on their Sunday. But the origin is that the up until Western society took a hold, nobody ever was worried about 7 days a week with no change. It was there was the moon, there was the lunar calendar. The lunar calendar has always existed, right? We always went off of the function of the moon. It's not until you get to people who start worshiping, even if you want to go before that, you have to then, and you'll see little hints of this, maybe on, because some people like his explanations better on this, Truth Unedited and persons like that. You'll even see a little bit of explanation on this. He doesn't really go deep into it. I don't know if at the time, because that was when he first started, so I don't know if at the time he had all that together. But look at even what he's talking about as far as Ishtar and how she tries to get people to worship her, but then Nimrod is used as the sun. Nimrod becomes the father god. All of a sudden, Ishtar, she was saying she was the moon. But then she says, well, if you want to know who impregnated me, who has real power, it's the sun. So now you get the S-U-N as the S-O-N. But mathematically speaking, as far as your years, looking in the Bible as far as your years and where they take place and how they start and how spring moves and it's not supposed to move, it doesn't make it's not biblical. Put it even like this. I don't know if you guys have done this research or not. Some of you probably have, but look at it like this. How you doing, Auntie Mary? One of the things that we can talk about is spring, summer, winter, fall should be around the same time. And if you're going off of 7 days a week, no matter what, even if it's 364, and then trying to do depending on what your belief system is in that, you do get different things to get your extra days. But I don't even know if I can say it differently. I'm trying to say it differently than what I've said in times past, but would you say the same thing? You have to still figure out how to change the stuff because those things are going to change automatically, right? I think that people go, because once again, we're so busy on stuff should be the same time no matter what, that's not that's not Yah's calendar, right? Like time is once again relative, but time is linear to a certain degree, but time is not what we believe it to be. Like we're like, oh, okay, there's got to be this many days no matter what, and it's a cultural thing, right? Like it's a Western thing more than anything else. And even the persons that you're dealing with in the West, they used to have to change their calendar because their calendar would get off. Right? Like Julius Caesar used to have to change the calendar. Even when he went by the Egyptian calendar, which is closer to 364 than what we do, he had to change the calendar because you're going to get off. And you're going to get off eventually by days, like by tens of days, sometimes 30, 40 days even. Right? So with that, and somebody says that doesn't make sense, but the mindset is that spring, winter, or spring, summer, winter, fall should always be around the same dates, but not thinking about it as being ooh, okay. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but it just hit me when I said it. I don't, I don't know if people think about there's a difference between times and dates. You guys know that, right? Like the same time is not always the same date, right? The same time of year is not always the same date of year. Does that make sense? So a lot of persons who kind of come off this stuff because they're trying to be like, no, it's got to fit the it's got to fit the dates, and it's like, no, it's got to fit the time, right? That's why some of you have realized your dates. Winter doesn't match what it's supposed to match anymore. Summer doesn't match what it's supposed to match anymore. Spring doesn't match what it's supposed to match anymore. Fall doesn't match. So when you look at other Western Eurocentric thought process concerning dates, they might actually say stuff like this is record breaking here, blah blah, but they're usually not around the same date, right? If you've noticed, like your dates, even in 20, 30 years, for some of us that are younger, 50, 60 years for some of us that are older, if you just look at it, your dates have changed for when things are supposed to happen, but that doesn't mean the time has changed, right? So my date might be different than my time, right? The time for spring is not always the same date. And that's, you see what I'm saying? We have this weird, like the machinations, the Western machinations and the teachings that we've received have got us in a place where we're doing some stuff that culturally is inaccurate as far as how we would have seen it. We're more in tune with the modern, right? And the modern is not necessarily original. That's why we talk about salvaging or salvation, right? Not just salvaging of one place or one thing, but salvaging of things, period, right? So everything has to get back on track. But we have lost, like, our calendar. Our calendar did shift. There is no such thing for us as there has to be 7 days every week. There are 7 days most weeks, but not every week, because the moon changes position, right? So for us, most weeks, right? Most weeks are 7 days, but there's some weeks, depending on how you want to look at it, if it's 2 extra days, or if you want to look at it just 2 days by itself, there are some weeks where we know that there's a couple extra days, or there's only going to be 2 days, and then we say, okay, we got to switch over, right? And that's based on what the position of the moon, which we can mathematically, predict is going to do the same thing over and over again, right? Now, it wasn't until somebody else came through and said, hey, we want to be like Kemetic persons, and we want to be like Afrocentric persons, we want to be like Alkebalan, et cetera, we want to take some of the things that they're doing and put them in with what we're doing. But they were already on their 7. See, the 7-day theory, as far as it has to be 7 days no matter what, it comes from not only the 7 spirits that we just talked about, or the 7 things that are worship, sun, moon, Tibbs, et cetera, but then also, too, you have to go into the 7, what they call 7 celestial beings, right? Where they believe that there were 8 planets, right? They believed there were 8 planets. Earth was one of them. Gaia was one of them. And then the belief system is that you have 7 others, right? So even Saturn, right, was a planet. Even before they could see Saturn through a lens, through a telescope, they still believed that this body that was moving was Saturn, right? And the way that it moved, they said it parted, so it was Saturn, right? And Jupiter was the biggest one, so that was Zeus, that was Jupiter, right? Mars was one, so they said that's the one that fights, right? Mercury was one, that's Nike or Hermes, the messenger. Or if you get into what a lot of persons still use, the Visigothic stuff, and especially mixing it with things of Odin and stuff, well then Mercury is actually Odin, right? Venus is one of their you see, so they were going off of that. And so you have a 7 day, you had a 7 day thing because there were 7 celestial beings. Then eventually, depending on which version you're using, you change the names of them, but there's still 7 celestial beings. That's what they did. That's not why Kemet had 7 days, right? That's not why Israel had 7 days most of the time. That's not why many African nations, many even Central American nations with pyramids and with things very similar time-wise, because we know that persons of Kemet and persons of West Africa, etc., were traveling back and forth from what we call Central and South America and back over to West Africa and Kemet, right? And even some of the Melanesians and Polynesians, stuff like that. There's a lot more to it. And these cultures were not going off of there's only 7 days a week, there's 365 days, and the 364 has been like a new thing to say, okay, well, if we go 7 days, 7 is still close to 364. That's actually newer. That's not an original or ancient way anybody used to do anything. Right? Hi, Sister Donna. I don't know why you coming in with all that, but you don't have to, don't worry about that. Don't say that. How you doing, Jay Canavan? How you doing, Sister Joy? How you doing, Bruder Richard? So, but yeah, so there's a lot of different teachings that are out there. If you're going to buy original, even what I see here, even with it spending a lot of time talking about the sun, to me it doesn't say much different than what it says in Genesis chapter 1. Jubilees 2, Genesis 1, saying the same thing. How you doing, Brightborn? Basically saying the sun, the moon, the stars were created. Yes, the sun is extremely important. And also too, and let's not get this twisted, it's not just talking about the sun as far as the time and seasons, it's talking about even as far as the sun giving nutrients, right? It talks about the sun as far as the sun, doing things like the chlorophyll and making sure that there's chloroplast and making sure that magnesium is there to rein in some of the stuff and we can feed off of it, and talking about different things like that, talking about what's done with the waters and how the sun affects even what's going on in the water, how it affects your melanin. There's a lot of different things it's talking about. Well, it doesn't talk about the melanin as much because man's not created yet, but that's something that obviously the sun's going to be able to do and take care of. So even in Jubilees, it's not just talking about the sun only as far as like we can't tell time anytime outside the sun, or the sun has to come first. That's not what it says. And really, if we go deeper into it, whether we're talking about Jubilees 2, 8 through 10, or we read Jubilees 2, 20, was it 20 through 22 or 20 through 23, maybe 19 through 22, something like that. But when we read those, we can see very clearly as well that it's also talking about Shabbat and Shabbat being kept. And I want Shabbat to be kept the same way that I kept Shabbat. He said that I'm going to set apart a nation. Now, this is the key in the question too, and this is getting down more. I guess to the nitty gritty of what you were asking. Now that I think about it more, he says that I'm going to set apart Shabbat the same way I used to set apart Shabbat, right? And I'm going to set apart Shabbat for a people that will be set apart. My people will keep my commandments. Therefore, they're going to keep my Shabbat, right? So he says that the same way that I keep Shabbat is the same way you should keep Shabbat. All right. Now, in the Bible, we got to go through this now. There's no 7 days, 364-day calendar in the Bible, which means Yah didn't keep Shabbat 7 days, every 7th day for 364 days without changing the days. We know this. We also know that we also have evidence that we brought up before in multiple places telling us that Israelites, that the Bible is, that Israelites recognize sundown being the beginning of a day. Right, Yechashvai, we just talked about on the Tav, right? We just talked about him starting Passover that night, and all of that it happens within like 16 to 18 hours is the whole thing from Passover to Yahashua giving up the ghost, all within the same day, right? We know that the evening and the rising every single day is not the rising to the rising, it's not the rising to the evening is the day, the evening to the rising, right? Or as your Bible says, the evening to the morning, right? But the evening to the rising every day is the beginning of the next day, 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 right? So that's how Yah looked at it. And when Yah rests on the seventh day, even though we could say, well, it's a Yom and nobody knows 100% what's going on, and could it be more figurative? Sure, but the figurative and the physical oftentimes align, correct? Because even when we talk about an example that Yah gives or an example that Yah gives, He's given us things that we can see how things work in the heavenly and the physical at the same time, right? So, how you doing, Jeremy? So these are things that we have evidence of where, yeah, there's now, does it mean that we don't see something happens when the sun rises? Does it mean that there's not certain things that Yah says you can do when the sun rises? Of course there are. But we see biblically over and over again a lot of examples telling us evening to the rising. Darkness comes to light, right? In the darkness, the seed is sowed. But when the light comes out, the wheat separated from the tares. There's a constant, consistent thought process of that. The sun is extremely important, but the sun, but we have to be careful. Jubilees is not saying that because the sun is important, therefore we don't adhere to what Yah are always adhered to, right? This also means if Yah adhered to it, then it was in His perfect will that Adam and so-called Eve, Adam and Eve, they adhered to it, right? And so even when they're kicked out of the garden, more than likely we don't see that He says, hey, one of the curses is that I'm going to change the pattern of the sun, the moon, the stars. So that means that Seth and Enos, etc., on down the line adhere to it, right? We even have evidence and stuff like that that Abraham adheres to it, right? So, in a way, we could even say, because remember, Lot met up with Abraham, or met up with the angels in the same manner that Abraham did, and so even we can see kind of like if Abraham adhered to it, then more than likely Lot and these others adhere to it. It's now a new thing to us. And when I say new, I'm talking relatively, right? We're going back thousands of years, but it's not the origin to say that the day starts when the sun comes up. You don't get that until you have persons who worship the sun. When people begin to worship the sun, when you get to Helios, when you get to, I might need help from anybody here played God of War, Baldur. When you get to worship of Baldur, when you get to the worship of Noon, if you know about Kemet, when you get to Allah, when you get to certain things like that, that's when you start having, when you get to Nimrod even, you start having persons have a conversation that the sun, excuse me, overshadows or is greater than the moon. And the reality is that they work hand in hand. And, right? And the sun, as the Bible says, that the sun goes around the earth, it says the moon goes around the earth as well. Now, the moon does have a lesser light, is what it says, right? But it doesn't mean that, the sun is what we address today. So the sun, we can dictate, just like the moon, by the way. So, put it like this. Excuse me, y'all. Sorry. Trying to hang in there. So we could say that the sun, excuse me. So we could say that the um, sun definitely tells us where we are in each day. That's true, right? We can even say the sun comes up and comes down for longer or shorter periods of time. That's true. But the moon always tells us where we are in the month. That's also true, right? So they go together. So when we say lunar calendar, or even you talk about solar calendar, we should never think of them isolated. The two go together. That being said, though, we're supposed to keep Shabbat the way that Yah kept Shabbat, and that means that the Israelites, here's the deal: we have to figure out where in the Scripture did Yah change evening to the rising, and where did He change in the Scripture how to look at the months, right? Right, like we have to look at that. We have to ask ourselves, when did the change happen Because Yah from the beginning, evening to the rising, Yah from the beginning, position of the moon, right? We can see this as far as the months. That's something that we even use as an indication for our holy days in Leviticus, right? In Numbers, in Deuteronomy. So we have to ask ourselves, when did it become the sun first, and when did it become? You see what I'm saying? Like I know the person is saying, and so that would be my question, not to even you guys, but to those who teach that, right? Because I know there's others that teach different, so I'm not coming at anybody here. I'm just saying in general. My question for that person would be, you got to show me, when did y'all say we leave the moon alone as far as showing us when the month starts? Right? When did y'all say that? When did y'all tell us to stop using the moon as an indication of the month starts with the moon? When did y'all say go by 7 days a week only? Right? Because that was never a thing until others became our rulers. And what happens, which is dangerous, but it's the truth, even when we saw that word firmament written in there, further proof, but we have to be careful. Remember, firmament is dealing with something that actually comes from Uranus, who's one of the one of the seven spirits they believed in. They believed there were seven luminaries, seven spirits that they could see in the skies, and Uranus was one of them. Right? Uranus is supposed to be the one who was one of Uranus and Neptune were immaculately conceived by Gaia. Gaia is supposed to be the Earth. This is how they get to what we believe or what we know to be true. They get to it a different way, through a different lens, through a different prism, through a different culture. And so they said that Neptune ended up being out of pocket. And so chronos, chronology, time, so this is their way of trying to say the same thing that our word says differently and says is Yah's way. They say chronos, or chronology, or time, was born from Uranus, or what you call firmament, and was born from Gaia, Earth. So Earth gave birth to her own son. Then Earth had relations with her own son. That's their belief system. And then out of Earth and Uranus comes other children. Other titans. One of which was Chronos, time. So they're saying that, the Bible talks about it being different, right? But they're saying time comes from so-called firmament, or Uranus, and Earth. And when they split, right, the split and all that stuff that the Bible talks about, they say no, they came together, and out of them comes time, which later on for us, right, in day number 4, sun, moon, and the stars show up. That's when time shows up. So they say Chronos, time, comes that way, right? And so now you're having this conversation when you talk about firmament. Firmament is talking about, well, Chronos and his mother slash sister, weird stuff going on, right? But let's just make it simple. Chronos realizes that his father slash brother, his mother slash sister, or his father and mother, his father is wilding out. And so his father's like, or his father slash, or his mother slash grandmother, I don't know, it's wild. But anyway, so he's like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna come up with a plan. And so Gaia, Earth, and Uranus, who becomes firmament in a second, they end up having sexual relations. And when they lay, and she lays in a position to make sure that Uranus's testicles are exposed, and Kronos comes in and takes basically like a scythe type thing and does what he does. And when he does that, then Uranus begins to slowly fade. He never dies, but he fades, and they say he becomes what you call firmament. Firmament is not even what you think it is, but they believe that time basically comes out of firmament and Gaia coming together, and time actually cuts off certain things. So those who are locked in time on this side of things are not dealing with what's going on in Mount Olympus. It's a whole different construct as far as time. That's why I say, like, culture matters a whole lot in these conversations, because if we're not careful, we'll have a long, drawn-out conversation, and we're like, hey, do you comprehend that their dates and time, like they look at dates and time different than we look at dates and time? you know, like they're having a whole different conversation. Even if, see, and that's why context is key as well, because context gets lost, but we're still having the same conversation based off of the context, right? So so they're having the same conversation based off of the context, but context is king. it is for conversation, because conversationally we'll get off. We talk about something completely different. So yeah, like I get like there's 364, even 365, sometimes 366. There's even the 368 out there. There's a 370, but we never, until certain persons took over and they started changing the context of chronology or chronos or time, which is worship. Remember, it's a titan. So there are persons that used to hope and pray to time, right? If you listen even to some of the sayings the persons have about time, sounds like they worship time. We should be on time, but not worship time. But this is a different context. Everything is a spirit, a sparare. Everything is a deity, a deus for them, right? Or a titan. So this is what they're talking about. So we're dealing with different things, and so we have to be careful, because a lot of times we're still looking through somebody else's prism or somebody else's teaching to try and help us to get a handle on something that we wouldn't have even thought like that. We would have never thought about time until we became underneath others, and others forced us to. We would have never thought about time having to be Sunday through Saturday. That's a foreign concept. We're living by more foreign concepts or seps that have become concepts than we are by natural Yah-made precepts, right? Like the way we look at time is way different. The way we look at dates is way different, right? But there's a difference between dates and time, right? And there's a different way of looking at even those through the prism. So Yah already had, when he had 7 days, the first 7 days, right? Those first 7 days were not 24 hours. We don't know how they could have. Look at it. We don't know exactly how long they were. But when it says the first yom or the first day, that's a period of time. The first yom is a period of time. We didn't start really even getting into counting the yoms the same way, if you notice, until after Adam and Eve sinned. So when it tells us Adam is 900 something years old, 960 plus years old, we don't even know if that started once he sinned or if it started before. Because if he was created, excuse me, on if he's created when God's resting, right, from his occupation and giving him that occupation, then he's also giving him the ability to live forever. So how many born days did he have before then? Or was he even looking at born days the same way, because he was never, there was no death. Like death had no power. Death was created, but death doesn't have power until he sins. So even until sin, you're not even counting days the same. You see, so it's like there's a lot of it's like when, and this might be, some person might say you just reading too much into it. Yeah, I am. And I wouldn't say too much. I'm reading a lot more than a lot of others do. But yeah, time is a completely different concept before sin, and then after sin, time is still even a completely different concept that people are living 900 and something years. How long did Noah live? He lived 950 years, was it? 850 or 950? I think he lived 950. Methuselah lived 960 something. Adam lived 960 something. Time is a whole different thing, relatively speaking. So death had no power over us. So time was nothing more than, hey, like time was nothing more than I'm riding down the highway and somebody says, hey, when you get to exit 37, you're halfway there. So I just be riding through. I'd be like, oh, exit 37, same thing. Like I just be going through eternity, and I see a sign, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm halfway through what I need to do in this day or this yom, if I'm assigned to do it in that time, or the season will move or whatever. But that's just telling me where I was in time. In eternity, I am. So it's a different context altogether. So it gets difficult. That's why I said, like, certain things of these, they're not going to happen correctly until we live them enough, and some of them aren't going to happen until we live together. Because some of them are, rather, they're not going to make sense. Because unless you actually have the time to live by the dates, it's going to be weird to you. Because in our mind, hey, okay, if it's Passover, then Passover should be the same day every year. No, that's not biblical. That's not what Israel did. That's not what Yah did. That's not what he commanded. In our mind, right? But in our mind, it's because, hey, Thanksgiving is always As a matter of fact, Thanksgiving's not even always the same date either. We get more. We kind of get the mindset with that, but we don't. Even though Thanksgiving is a foreign and a fallible thing, and it's a terrible thing, right? But as far as the way it's celebrated in the United States of America and other places, Thanksgiving just means a day of fasting or a period of fasting. But that being said, in America, Thanksgiving is a terrible thing. That being said, though, persons know the fourth Thursday, or the last, is it the last Thursday or the fourth Thursday, whatever, of the month. It's going to be Thanksgiving no matter what. So in my mind, growing up, I used to think it was always the 28th because it seemed like it was always the 28th, but that's not the case. It's the fourth. It's that fourth Thursday. So we kind of see this work anyways, and know that you don't have to have the same time at the same date, but we're used to everything has to be the same time. Like your born day has to be the same day. But if we were to actually go by your born day and Yam Yasalav and by our calendar, right, Rosh Hashanah and each month, etc. So each new moon, guess what you would do, right? Right? If you would actually go by each new moon or each head of the month, that's what Rosh Hashanah even means. So each new moon, what we call new moon, is really every head of the month. Every head of the month is when you have a new moon. So if you were to do that, you would actually have to recalculate every year because your born day wouldn't be on the same day. But we just do that because we've been inundated by the West. But that's not actually how it works. That's not truthfully how it works at all. So it's just a different way. It's difficult to get. It's difficult to gather. And so a lot of what we do is we reach usually for a lot of Western or beast-like even teachings to try and say, okay, this is when, and this is how it really was, and blah, blah. No. And a lot of persons even who do that are coming from usually more certain type of Cushitic, Kemetic, foot type teachings, even Canaanite teachings for the most part. And then obviously things that come out of Javad, or we're talking about some of the sons of Javad, Tubal, some of the sons of Japheth, right? But we're usually going into persons who are getting into sun worship, and we're getting into sun worship. You're looking at your calendar different, right? So I would just be careful with that. If you're going to use those calendars, I would say find out what those calendars actually are, but you will not find any biblical precedence or reference for coming outside of what they did. And what they did is clearly evening to the rising. Like I said, you even with evening, that's what I'm trying. I don't want to move too fast. I know I get very repetitive on this because we talked about this so many times, but so be it. I just want to make sure we get the. I want to be obedient to what Holy Spirit asks, and you guys asked the question. I want to be obedient. Even when you look at, if you were to go to certain places in Africa right now, if we were to go over there, at some point we're going to go back over there and do another revival or something like that, and go help out the community and try to build on land and stuff like that. When we go over there, what you'll discover is you're going to give a time. You're going to say, let's say revival is going to be every day at noon. What you'll discover is it's going to be noon. You're going to see some person show up really early because they're going to make sure the food and stuff is being prepared and all that. But then you'll see it'll be about noon. Maybe a couple persons have shown up. You'll see it's going to be 1 p.m. Maybe you got kind of the room setting up. It's going to be about 2 p.m. Okay, now it's starting to be clear everybody's coming. And you'll probably ask a question, like, after a couple of days, like, why don't we just start at 12? Why this and that? Well, 12 is relative, right? 12 is relative. They still go by that, right? People will call us lazy and stuff like that. It'll be like, oh, these people don't have. A lot of our people have a problem. Look, I kind of have one too. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting, released, and I believe you should be on time as best you can. That being said, time is relative. Like, for example, addresses, right? It's just cultural. Addresses are relative. It's just now, the last few years, that a lot of African nations are, right, unless they still have heavy European influence. It's just now becoming a thing where people even know what your address is. Like, persons know where you live, but they don't know your address. That's a new thing for us, right? Like, literally, you go somewhere and you get a cab, you get a driver, whatever the case might be, and you tell them, I'm trying to go to such and such. They might be 5 cities over, this and that or whatever. First thing they're going to do is they're going to go over to the city. And then once they get over to the city, if they don't know where such and such is, everybody is a community. Everybody knows each other. So what they'll start doing is saying, okay, you're looking for a blue house in Millennium City. Okay, is it the paved road place? Is it an unpaved place? Okay, is it where the Muslims worship? Is it where the Christians worship? Okay, is it is there a lot of fruit over there? Is it bare? They'll start having conversations about a lot of different things because there's way more ways of finding out where somebody lives besides just an address, right? Now, if you don't have somebody's address, many of us wouldn't know what to do. If somebody were to say, go visit Sister Monica in the Bronx, somebody out there wouldn't be able to like open up a map or just ask people along the way, even if you've never been to New York City, they wouldn't be able to be like where the figure out where the Bronx is, and then once we get to the Bronx, we can actually start having some conversation. We can start looking at landmarks. We can start looking at what time of day it is. We can start looking. You see what I'm saying, right? There's different ways of being able to do it. Somebody were to say, "I'm looking for Kofi in Baltimore," okay, but a lot of cats aren't. Unless somebody gave it to you because we're so stuck on the address. It's kind of like in your head. Remember, you used to have a bunch of phone numbers, right? When I was growing up, I used to take pride in having at least 40 to 50 phone numbers like that. Right? Even if 3, 4, 5 might be for the same person, so what? Right? I needed to have about 40 to 50 phone numbers in my head. You never knew when you needed to make a call. And this now, we have this. So to be honest with you, 40 or 50, I still know like parts of you guys' phone numbers. But if somebody were to be like, tell me everybody's phone number, I couldn't do it anymore. But it used to be had to be like that, right? So we've kind of gone away from certain things that are there. So like addresses are relative. Like they're just starting to get to a place where a lot of places are like, oh, okay, I guess we need to have a number and go by that, and we'll put the number on the map. And it makes sense to do, just like it makes sense to have longitude and latitude. That being said, though, you used to have constellations. I don't need to know your longitude and latitude. Just tell me the constellation. Tell me where you are in comparison to it. Tell me, all right, tell me you're north of this island. Tell me blah, blah. Okay, cool, I'll find you. That's how Polynesians, Melanesians, Austronesians did it. That's how West Africans we did it. We that's how you have people of Mali coming over to South America. Matter of fact, Christopher Columbus has learned how to get over to the Americas from us, from East Africans and West Africans. That's how he learned, right? And they were looking for the according to them, they were looking for Asheroth. Asheroth is us, who had already been coming over. Nowadays, unless you have a map, many persons wouldn't be able to make it because many of us don't think of that as being a norm. But the same thing, right? If you were to go over to a lot of places that still aren't as tied to some of the stuff we have today, 12 o'clock is relative. It's a 2-hour period. So they're looking at the sun, or they're looking at somebody says 12 in their mind. They're like, okay, we got a couple hours. And you'll think that they're late, but in their culture, they're on time. So when we do go over there at some point again, as a family, as a SOC family, just be ready for stuff like that. Like, because not everybody is looking at this thing that we call time and dates the same way that we do. We're very westernized. We're very educated, as some of our people used to say. We're very educated. Ain't nothing wrong with being educated. Ain't nothing wrong with being cityfied. Just don't forget that there's some persons that are still intelligent, even if they aren't educated, and they have a culture, even if it's not learning through the prison that you've learned from. Right? So it's a different way of looking at time. I hope that makes sense. We kind of went into a lot of different things, but I was just going there because, and some persons at the end of the day, it's kind of to each their own. There's some persons that are going to say no matter what, they're going to stay locked in to what they're in. They're going to stay locked into what somebody said. I'm just telling you, when these persons do say these things, teach these things, ask them to show them show you in your Bible, even in Jubilee, because Jubilee really doesn't say anything different outside of just saying the sun is something that brings a lot of energy to the earth, right? But I would just say, make sure that you ask them specifically, like, where does the Bible say 364? Where does the Bible say 7 days only? Where does the Bible say Yah doesn't want us to go by the evening to the rising anymore? It's only about the sun and that's it, or it's only about the sun to the evening. Like, we have to figure that out. because we don't have a change in the word. We've had a change since the word. We've had a change of the word in some cases, unfortunately, but we haven't had a change in the word. It's not changing the word. So and last thing on this, I think Sister Latoya asked, and this is one of those things I'm gonna say I don't know. There's theories on it, but you were asking about the moon. Is it they say that it reflects the light, but it says it's a lesser light in the Bible. So does that mean the moon itself illuminates? Um, I wouldn't know until I get to the moon. And I'm one of those persons that doesn't necessarily. I lean towards nobody's really been there, including all this new stuff they've been coming out talking about. Everybody's paying money to just go outside the Earth real quick and come back in, which is always wild because it's like, why aren't y'all going to the space stations, or why aren't you going to the moon, or why aren't you going to this and that or whatever? But I leave that alone because I know I'm a flat earther, so I leave that alone. But I don't know. I don't know to answer that question pretty quickly, even though you probably been waiting a while for me to get back to it. I'm not sure about that. If it reflects light or if it illuminates, it just says that it's a lesser light. Does that mean, therefore, it reflects the light of the sun? I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure. I'll just leave it at that. How you doing, Sister Angela? How you doing, Big Chief? How you doing, Vassal or Coleman? Um, TB such a Parker. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Um, Next question we had quite a few questions that you guys sent in. Um, One was about marriage. Is sex marriage? Is marriage sex? We say sex is marriage, marriage is sex. So, what does that mean as far as if somebody has sex and they decide they don't want to be married, or if somebody is married and they don't have sex, something along those lines, right? If you have sex with somebody but you decide not to be married, that's a cultural difference, right? In our culture, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Now, obviously, I'm not saying, see, marriage is an institution, right? But that being said, one of the things that you gain access into the institution is, in fact, sex, right? And in our culture, you're not qualified to have sex until you are already a husband or a wife, right? So, how you doing, Sarah Fox? So, culturally speaking, biblically speaking, it's a different mindset altogether. And by the way, those who are confused by that, let me help a little with the confusion before we get deeper into some of the stuff word-wise. Because sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Um, if you were to look at the laws of your states, of your countries, you would discover that your marriage doesn't count until it's consummated. Now, you live in a place to where they keep the law when they want to and they're legal when they want to be. But technically, your marriage was never legal until, like, I know what you did with kissing each other and stuff like that and signing the marital contract. But if you guys sign your marital contract and go through all the paperwork and everything, and you're in a relationship for 3 weeks, whatever, and you guys don't have sex, you can come back and annul your marriage. Why? Because that piece of paper doesn't mean anything until two become one. Now, after two become one, now we can have a conversation. And if you'll notice, after two become one, the judge will even be like, well, I know, like I said, you want to get divorced after a month. The judge will try and counsel you, try to be like, hey, wait a couple more months. And then they'll say, come back before me. If you want the divorce, then come and get it. But as far as for the most part, right, they won't do that. But sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Your marriage, whatever contract you had in your life, didn't even count until you had sex, until you two became one. That's law. Right? That's law. So a lot of persons don't catch that marriage, as far as Yah was concerned, was only so sex, marriage is only supposed to be for those who are two who have become one. And by the way, we can just make this clear right up front too. How you doing, Sister Greta? Two becoming one is one husband and one wife, right? In our culture, there would be one male who has been pre-qualified to be a husband and one female who has been pre-qualified to be a wife. Anything outside of that is not two becoming one. So in our culture, a boyfriend and a girlfriend having sex is not marriage. Two persons who like each other having sex is not marriage, right? In our culture, marriage is not between a man and a man. It's not between a woman and a woman. Watch this. It's not between a man and a woman. It's not between a man and a wife, which some of you stated when you got married, walked down the aisle. It's not between a woman and a husband. It's between a husband and a wife. You are already supposed to be qualified by our community, by our culture, by Yah's standard, by His word. You're already supposed to be pre-qualified as husband and wife. If you are not, then you are not qualified to be married. You are not qualified for sex. So any sex you're having outside of marriage, outside of a husband and a wife, pre-qualified, who've gone through certain procedures and have been trained since birth. And by the way that this works is the first 3 years of your life, ages 0 through 3, you're supposed to be trained to be a boy and a girl. Ages 0 through 3, you're supposed to be weaned from your mother or get ready to get closest to your mother, because ages 7 through 9, you're supposed to be an apprentice to your father or apprentice to your mother, depending on if you're a son or a daughter. Then ages 10 through 12, you're supposed to get your extreme education, like they give you to school and all that stuff for years and years and years. But you're supposed to get a whole racket at ages 10 through 12. Ages 13 through 15, you're training what it is to be a adult male and an adult female, or a man and a woman. Ages 16 through 18, you're supposed to be trained on what it is to be a husband and a wife. Ages 19 to 21, you're supposed to be trained on what it is to be a mother and father. Age 22, we give the son his inheritance and say, go out and make us proud and do what your father and your father's family does. And find, in the midst of your work, you will find the wife. The wife, right, and the one who's been trained to be woman, mother, wife, she stays in her father's house, although she can have her own business, do all types of stuff, but she's protected by her father. And once the husband finds a wife, presents himself to her, and presents his vision that Yah's given him to her, and sees her vision, and they talk about it. If they agree to get married, then the parents get involved. If the parents are okay with it, then the community gets involved. If the community is okay with it, then he goes to prepare a place for his wife. She prepares herself for her husband, so that then two can become one when the husband is sent by the father. For no man knows the day nor hour except the father. The father will tell his son when to go get his bride. That's culture. There's a whole different mindset. So when we say sex is marriage, marriage is sex, we're talking about specific guidelines even for sex, which, by the way, why shouldn't there be? Now, I'm not talking about we should tell you what position you need, blah, blah, and all that, and what you want to stick, whatever, and that's, the bedroom is undefiled. You and your spouse go in there, y'all do what y'all do. Sorry to be adult, but real talk. So, some cats out here telling you got to do this and you got to be in this position, and if you're not doing this, it's not holy sex. And no, there's no scriptural reference for that. There's no truth to that. But you guys can go in your bedroom and y'all do what y'all do. The bedroom is undefiled, right? But as far as actual getting to being married, there are specific things that's supposed to be there. Well, once again, so the premarital qualifications, we just talked about a bunch of them, right? But it starts from birth. So one of the things that we have a problem with is that a lot of men, regardless of if they are so-called homosexual, whatever, LGBTQ plus, etc., thank y'all for the love, no matter what. First 3 years, you're supposed to really hone in on making sure that you have strong males and strong females, be it from birth, straight up, right? Now, if you disagree with this, once again, this is cultural. I'm not coming to everybody trying to see if everybody would agree or see if I hit certain colloquialisms or certain guidelines that the world would say they're okay with, right? In our culture, it starts from birth, right? You see a husband and a wife in your house. You see dad do what he's supposed to do. You see mom do what she's supposed to do. You hear the word constantly, consistently. You're taught these things. You're taught to even about things that others now send their children to school to learn. You learn these things, right? Then the next few years, you have persons that are weaned and all that. But let's say as far as premarital qualifications, a lot of persons want to skip past that. But I say we should go back to that because a lot of us were raised incorrectly. That being said, though, if we were to skip ahead a little bit, right, and we start talking about what are the biggest years for your child, I say all of them are big, right? But if we talk about culturally, ages 13 to 15 are going to be extremely important. Why? Because ages 13 through 15, that's when you're training them to be a man and you're training her to be a woman. Or what they call man and woman. We would say Adam at Ayazan, but you get what I'm saying. You're training them to be an adult male, an adult female culturally. What else starts happening? Well, it's already started happening during the education phase, but what else starts happening at about age 13 is that everybody basically is dealing with hormones crazy, right? Which means that when the hormones are picking up, you're now starting to focus on adulthood and you're not shying away from certain things. That's really when the training really should be happening, right? There's certain conversations that we should have. There's certain jokes that, even though my son's only turning 10, but I mean, I pay attention to him. And so when he turns 10 this year, we already have certain conversations or even jokes because he's homeschooled. So some of the stuff and he's a only child, right? So there's certain, or at least he's raised as an only child, and so there's certain things that, he would normally be doing with his brothers, be doing with a lot of boys around in school and stuff or whatever, that as much as we talk bad about it, some of the stuff is natural. Like locker room talk to a certain degree, right? There's some stuff that's out of pocket, but to a certain degree, yeah, boys will laugh about certain things, or they'll notice things on girls, or girls will notice things about boys, or they'll start talking about, even though they do some when they're little children as well, but when they start getting around that age, they're really starting to talk about boyfriends and seriousness and having babies and what the hair is going to look like and all this stuff. We should be having a lot of dialogue about that, and there's a lot of stuff that wasn't talked about, and therefore there's a lot of dishonesty that's kind of made its way there, where we pretend that we have had great conversations about things, and the reality is that we're still afraid to speak on certain things, right? Right after that is when you're training when to be a husband and wife. That's ages 16 through 18. So once we make sure that, hey, as far as the word is concerned, as far as community is concerned, you are an adult male. Next thing up right after that is we need to make sure that we check you as far as you are a husband. Right? Like you are an adult male, cool. You are a husband. What does it mean to be a husband in the word? Right? And by the way, even when you look at Ephesians chapter 5, verses 25 on, and when you look at Ephesians 5:22 through 24, you'll discover that every time that word husband or wife is used, even in the Greek, it's talking about being pre-qualified. It's not even saying you have had sex with somebody, or you have a ring on it, so to speak, or whatever. It's saying legit, you have been trained according to our culture. So what's some things that are there culturally, even that Paul talks about? Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, starting at, what is it, verses 17 through 19, or 19 through 21, somewhere in there. I want to say maybe better 19 through 21. He says that first things first, like, have you been qualified as far as, like, do you have psalms and hymns? Do you protect your mind? Are you submissive to the Most High? Because you're supposed to submit one to another as you submit to Him, right? So we're looking for certain qualifications even with your marriage to Yah, right? And when a person said, well, what other qualifications are there? Well, there's qualifications, once again, that we would do as far as, once again, who is your father figure or spiritual father? But and persons don't like when I speak like this, especially persons like, I'm an adult, I'm in my 20s, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 70s, whatever. Who's going to be? Everybody should have somebody that they, in some way, shape, or form, check in with at least. And there's supposed to be community there to ensure that this happens. And the community as a whole is supposed to be in on this. We don't have to vote on it. We don't vote on it like that. I'm just saying, the persons who train you on what it is to be a man and a woman and to be a husband and a wife are supposed to be the same persons to look and see, okay, your parents agree on this, cool. Let's talk this over with whatever the group is that's put together, or the committee, if you will, kind of sort of works like a committee. But the reason why that is because we're supposed to know one another. See, so we have a whole different mindset, right? Like, we're supposed to know each other. We know each other's families. If you don't know them, somebody in the group's got to know them, right? And if we know that so-and-so was a knucklehead, by the way, just because your family might be cool with marrying them, we just want to let you know. We might need to reiterate real quick. Dude is kind of, he be tripping a little bit. If we know she's somebody who, thinks that she knows everything and has gotten her in trouble and gotten her family in trouble, somebody might have to say, hey, she's got a little bit of whatever. You might need somebody to say, hey, hold your horses, or maybe you don't know as much as you think you do, or you might want to think about this, or let's pray about it more, or hey, okay, cool, if you guys are going to get together, we need this much coaching to go through, we need to see some things change in both of your lives. It's supposed to be a whole lot of different things that are going on. And so when we come into mindset as far as relationships, marriage, which is sex, which is marriage, sex is something that's only supposed to be thought of for those who are have officially gone through so many different things. Remember, even the husband's supposed to go and prepare a place for his wife. Now, nowadays, once again, see, this is the thing. Jeremiah 29 talks about this. We have to realize we're in the land of our captivity, but we're still called to follow the law and follow it to the best of our ability. So is it set up to where it's easy for every man to own a bunch of land, blah, blah, this and that, or whatever? No. Does it mean he can't? No. But also, too, fine. If you got to go 50-50, if you got to go 75-25, whatever, right? Okay, cool. Right, let's do that. if you trust my wife, trust it. I look back and I think I was a little out of pocket for this. That being said, I'll tell the truth. My wife trusted that even though I was only bringing in a fraction, and she was doing very, very, very well, so it wasn't that I brought in nothing, but I brought in a fraction of what she was making at the time, right? Trying to get myself together, and she allowed me. She saw that I had this call, and she said you need to focus on that. And so we talked about it, but we had certain things we talked about. Hey, in this amount of time, she needs to feel like she's got backup. In this amount of time, can I get to a place to where I can help? In this amount of time, hey, the call is still this. So even if I get this, I'm telling you the call, I'm still called to do blah blah. Like we had to have conversations about it and get in tune about it. But we did, and I'm still working because I'm not exactly where I want to be and where she, where the promise to her was, and the goal is to get to a place to where she can have stuff in her name and do all these things or whatever. And so if something should happen to me, she'll be straight, right? But I'm just saying all that to say, there's a lot of things qualification wise. So yeah, like there's a conversation. Even part of the qualifications are supposed to be, the husband or the father and the mother of the bride, hopefully to be bride to be, need to have conversations with the father and mother of the groom, and they have to ask questions like, okay, how much can he provide? What are you guys going to do when our children are born? There's supposed to be a dowry. That's supposed to be talked about. It doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands. Doesn't have to be anything other than saying the person might do work for, right? Like it doesn't have to be that the dowry is that you pay, $100,000 up front. We had some persons who messed up and who have lied and said stuff, been like, oh yeah, I want you to buy me this as a woman, blah blah. No, that's not a dowry. Like you're supposed to even sow into the family to show the family that we're going to be family, and as I take care of your daughter, I also take care of you. Right? Thank you, Sister Michelle. Yeah, that's how it should be, right? And so, but those are things that we there's a lot of to talk about all the qualifications would take a really long time, to be honest. That's why we do some of the marital stuff that we do and talk to some of that, and even some of the marital sessions, and we're still trying to bring up some of the we're looking at doing some of what do you call those? I apologize. The questionnaires, things like that, to see where persons are, even outside of the love language stuff, just to see where persons are and things of that nature. But yeah, we're supposed to know one another. We're supposed to look for the values in each other. And a lot of persons, we were raised in a dating thing or even in the courting thing, right? And we think that even in courting is technically not even dating, but we kind of changed what words mean. And so a lot of us were raised, date and do this, and date and do that, and date and do this. But Yah's timing, here goes the terminology again, his timing is different than our dates. And for you to, a lot of persons just go, okay, we'll try to work this out. Basically, a lot of persons' dates are, we'll go out for today. Okay, work today. We'll try again next week. Okay, worked out next week. We'll try again. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll try every few days seeing each other. Okay, now it's every day. Now it's this and that or whatever. And the reality is in all that, persons still aren't getting prepared for marriage. Because once two are allowed to become one, right? That's what you're looking to be qualified to do. Then out of that institution comes a whole bunch of other stuff that's guaranteed. See, this is when they be telling sisters that you be and when they be telling brothers, there's two brothers, we don't listen either, but they be trying to tell you, you guys are expecting things out of a relationship, right, that's only supposed to be for a husband and wife. And a lot of persons are like, well, we having sex and blah blah. It's like, yeah, that's only for a husband and wife. Well, she's supposed to be cleaning and cooking. She's not gonna clean and cook. Yeah, that because you're not her husband, though. Well, how come she can clean and cook and she's over her father's house, she's over her mother's house, and she keeps stuff clean, but she can't help me over here? She's not your wife, right? Like we have a really weird, like we haven't been told. And then somebody goes, well, how am I gonna know she can do these things? You already know, even though she's not your wife. Well, how would I have known if I hadn't dated her? You could have went over the house. You could have seen her room. You could have seen his room. You could have seen his house. You could have seen his land. You could have seen her children if you're dealing with that. You could have seen his children. Right? How you doing, big dog? Right? You could have seen those things. We had this weird perception of things going through, but yeah, like there's certain qualifications. The qualifications are to get to the place where you are allowed to have sex. And out of that marriage, out of that two becoming one, then comes the other stuff. You said, what about the paying for the dates? We don't. The Bible doesn't. I don't believe in dating. The Bible doesn't say to date. So what are you paying for? Paying for dates and doing all this stuff. You should be making sure that your business is together. You should be making sure that your life is together. You should be making sure that your house is together. You should be making sure that you're growing something. You should be making sure that you have your righteousness together, so that when you do find a wife and you present yourself to her, you're presenting somebody that can take care of her, and then will show so by making sure you're building a place for her while she's preparing herself for you. So even when people had that conversation, I can't really get into that because people be like, "Well, who should pay on the date?" There's no dating, and it's once again, it's a different way. It's a different way of life. Like, I'm not trying to say that you can be with just anybody. That's why, wives, you have a right to say yes or no to anybody, and husbands, you have a right to present yourself to anybody, if they be husband or wife, opposite. Y'all get right, but you have a right to do that. That being said, even with having that right, if you apply these principles with just about anybody you would get with this, it's going to work. I'm not trying to say get with anybody. That's not even necessarily Yah's will. What I'm trying to say though is that no matter who Yah decides to put you with, He's giving you principles that they work. And we don't think about it. We just go, man, how's it gonna work if I don't do this, if I don't see this, if I don't see that? I don't know. But see, once again, here's the problem. A lot of this stuff is gonna be difficult to see through all the way until we actually come together. This is why before we just say, everybody pack up all your stuff. If you just want to live, if you tired of it, we don't care. You can, if you want to live off the land, come and live off the land. We can't have everybody just come right now, because everybody, if you show up, there's a lot of cats that's going to do a lot of stuff that's going to be messed up because we're still messed up in the mind. We have to get the mindset right. Como está, mi hermana Share? I hope I said hello earlier. Look, so there's a lot of stuff that's messed up in our mentality. Our mentality is still on the dating tip. Right, dudes are still husband, well, we'll say it the way it is. Dudes are still approaching these sisters with a mindset of, I'm going to approach her like I'm dating. Well, if you're approaching the sister like you're dating, you're not approaching her as if you're going to marry her. Period. Period, poo. Bottom line, right? If you're still coming with a dating mentality, then you're coming with a dated mentality. We said because everybody doesn't know the Israelites, sure. So we try to get with those who know. You see, we even have a choice. We don't have to go to church and try to figure out what's going on there. We don't have to go to the club. We don't have to see if somebody will approach us in the store, right? The goal is to get with those within your nation. That's what happened, right? If somebody from Judah married somebody who was a Levite, we knew. If somebody who was a Reubenite married somebody who was a Simeonite, we knew. If somebody who was of Naphtali got with somebody who was of Joseph, we knew. If somebody of Ephraim got with somebody of Manasseh, we knew. That means we have relationship. One of the biggest things missing. That's why I say all the time, one of the biggest things missing in this journey, the spiritual journey that many of us take through the Bible, is nation building, is a culture, is a community. All that stuff happened with persons who lived together or came to see each other on a regular basis, so much so that they were like this. That's right, the holy nation that's set apart. Going back to even the question that was asked about Shabbat. It says, I want Shabbat to be done like I want Shabbat to be done. I will separate my people to do Shabbat the way that I do Shabbat. Same kind of concept. I will separate my people to do marriage the way I do marriage. How does Yah do marriage? See, this is when it becomes key too. How does Yahweh do marriage? How long did he date you? Or did y'all say, I'm with you from the beginning? You see that? Like, there's a difference. That's supposed to be the standard. See, so even when we talk about qualifications, these are things we should learn before marriage. Right? Yah said you're his wife. That's what makes you the apple of his eye. You're not the apple of his eye because you could become his wife. You're the apple of his eye because you're his wife. So Somebody's like, I need for him to look at me like he's the apple of my eye, blah blah. Okay, fine. Is he talking about you? Y'all talking about husband and wife? No, I'm trying to see if he could become a husband. Is he not a husband already? What you mean? How is he a husband? He's not my husband. Is he a husband? If he's not a husband, then you shouldn't even be looking for that. And if you're talking like that, you probably don't think of yourself as a wife, which means that you're not qualified. You're already out of pocket. Yeah, on period poop. I learned that from a DC cat. What's his name? He's on YouTube. Comedian. He a little rough to listen to sometimes. But what's his name? Trey Rags. That's who I learned it from. It's probably been around for a long, long time. I'm just catching up. Right? But real talk, like a lot of persons are trying to have these conversations and not thinking marriage. And even if you start thinking marriage, once again, here's how it's supposed to go. Right? If we really doing it the way we're supposed to, hey, your parents should be involved from the beginning. When I met Elder Alma and we talked, we had our conversation and everything, um, I met her mom the same week or the week after. Right? I was calling her father, constantly and consistently. Hey, we need to meet up. That's the way it's supposed to work. And my father, no man, passed, but my father, hey, we need to meet my sister, my brother. I'd like for you to meet, I'd like for y'all to see what y'all think. It's a community, right? It's not just me, right? And I don't think persons like this is when it comes to humble yourself. I don't think persons even catch that. Like how, like when I'm married to my wife, that's a political statement. Can I say it like that? Right? Like when I married my wife, that was a political statement, right? When she married me, that was a political statement. That's a nationality statement. I'm not trying to say gotta marry before somebody goes there. I'm not even talking about color. I'm talking about seriously. When I married my wife, I made a statement that she and I are one. So whatever she does from this point on, from that point on, when we get together, when we decide we're gonna walk down the aisle or however you're looking at it, right? But when two become one, that's a political statement. Every child that you have is a political statement. You know this, right? That's why the Bible says something about your children's children and your children's children's children and all this stuff. It's all about your children, right? Your grandchildren, all this stuff, because it's a political statement. We don't think about that. The way our children act, the way they look, the way they speak, how they pray, how they talk, these are all political stuff. And once again, people say, I try to separate you're trying to separate politics. You can't separate politics from a kingdom. There's kingdom politics, there's worldly politics. Even poly, part of that definition means people. Polls, the opinions of the people. You're dealing with the same thought process. And so it's supposed to be a community oriented, community driven, and community taught thing that when you enter into this institution, you're also entering into the institution of Israel. It's a family, but it's also an institution. It's a marriage, but it's also an institution. It is sex, but it's also an institution. Their offspring, they are the result of the institution. And your offspring should be institutionalized by the same thing that institutionalized you. So your thoughts should be the same thing your children think. Your beliefs should matriculate. It's a lot. Yeah, so there's a lot that goes with that. And we don't always catch all those different things. We're not always looking and listening for those things, but there's a lot that goes with this. And so when we talk about qualifications, but back to sex is marriage, marriage is sex. So yeah, you're supposed to be pre-qualified for marriage to even know somebody. The people say, how do you date somebody? They see this. Here's another cultural difference. Somebody will ask the question, how do you date somebody without knowing them? But the problem with that is that the word canal or to know in Alpha and Paleo Hebrew, even if we were to use that context, to know is to be intimate with, right? To know is to be intimate with. You hear what I'm saying? To know is to be intimate with. So if you're going to be intimate with somebody, what does that mean? That means that you're going to become one with them, right? In our culture, even in the United States of America, when you say you know somebody, people are like, "Oh, you know so and so." They still do that in certain places because they realize if you're saying you know them, that's supposed to mean that you're intimate in some kind of way, right? So in the Bible, whenever it says two persons knew each other, or they so and so went and they now know so and so, that means that they had sex. They became one. They in essence were married. And when you saw that the marriage was not lawful, the Bible will tell you it was not lawful. How you doing, Shabbos? How you doing, DMZ? So sex is marriage, marriage is sex. So for us, it's not a thing of when I have sex with somebody, what if I don't marry them? As far as y'all's concerned, you're not qualified for sex, which is marriage, until both of you are already husband and wife, and until all the things that are supposed to be done are done correctly, right? And that's why we have leadership in certain things and parameters you're supposed to go through and be inside of. He says, so if you marry not knowing that person, where's the intimacy? Well, yeah, well, to know the person is to be intimate. Not, well, you're talking about on this, we want to talk about on the spiritual side or on the non-physical tip or on the mental side, the psychological side, etc. Um, yeah, but also, too, that's part of the taking time, learning about the person before you even approach. See, here's the way that we be thinking about. We're thinking like, I'm not saying, oh, okay, I see Elder Alma, and I'm just like, all right, I would just go ahead. I see her the first time. I'm gonna walk up to her and I'm gonna be like, hey, I want to be your husband. That's not how it works either, right? It's like I should take time out to recognize who she is. Let me study about her, just like Boaz did with Ruth, right? When Ruth approached her the way Naomi, when Ruth approached him the way Naomi said to approach him, he said, "Oh yeah, I already know about you." He was studying, right? He was like, yeah, she fine, she this, I know she did, but let me see what her life is about. How you doing, Brother Anthony? Anthony. He's like, let me check out her life though, real quick. Let me see what she doing out here. Okay, let me see. All right, she took care of Naomi. Okay, she decided that she gonna be Israel. Okay, like he already had. So when she presents herself, he's like, oh yeah, he was like, I was already preparing myself. I already knew what was up, and he even had a plan. He was like, yeah, I got to go ahead and I got to get my family to see about you first because it's about restoring Naomi as well. But if my family ain't gonna do what they're supposed to do, then I got rights to restore. When I restore Naomi, then I'm gonna be able to have you. Like he was already working on that stuff, but he had studied. And so when we say no dating, I think people just go like, I'm just saying at random, some dude should pick you, and you just be like, I guess, and then that's it. No, that's wild, right? But what I am saying is that yeah, like study and study those, and you should be in your work, right? As a husband, trained already. As a father, trained already. As a man, trained already. As somebody who had school education. As somebody who was an apprentice. As somebody who's gleaned from their mama. And as somebody who knows what it is to be a male, right? In our community, in our society, you should already be in your work. Right? Even Adam had work before he had woman. And while I'm in my work, just like Adam, I realized the necessity of a wife. And so when a wife shows up, though, Adam didn't even have that. He just was naming. But that we're naming things or seeing different things that we see what wives, or at least what helpmeets do for their husband or spouse or whatever you want to call that relationship that animals have. But when we see helpmeets and what they do, and we see the necessity of needing one in our own work, then when we start studying, and when we see that there is to help me, then we study her, and if she looks acceptable, then we present ourselves. If that's the case, then we bring our families together. If everybody's cool, then we bring it before the community. If everybody's cool, then I will start to prepare a place, which could take A year could take 6 months, could take 7 years, could take 14 years, according to the word. Now, I'm not saying it's got to. Prayerfully it doesn't, right? Prayerfully that was because somebody got tricked. But I'm just ultimately saying we'll start working to prepare a place for our wife and giving a dowry towards the wife's family, that while they're seeing us do that, they're seeing, oh, okay, wow, this is who he is, this is his heart, this is what he prepared for. And while preparing for somebody else for that long, for months, for years, etc., before that person even enters in, you're actually doing a lot more preparation than a lot. Because for real, if somebody says, hey, I want to lay down with you, and you lay down with them, even if it's 2 months later, even if it's 6 months later, whatever, if you lay down with the person, how much stuff did they really have to do? But somebody who's preparing themselves to not just have you come in and lay down, but is preparing themselves to take care of you for the rest of their life, what kind of mindset does that person have? Their parents constantly sowing into them, your parents constantly sowing into them, the community constantly saying this is what you need, like persons sowing into you guys, even financially, physically, emotionally, etc. Like, what does that happen when the whole community is involved with you guys making this work? Right? If you guys don't work, we don't work. It's a different, it's a different mentality. So a lot of persons have a mentality like, once I have sex, then maybe we'll get married, or once we get married, then we'll have sex. The two are not exclusive at all. The two are one. If one, in our culture, one has sex, they are married. If one is married, they have sex. Now, if you have sex and you're not pre-qualified and you didn't go through the steps, then it doesn't count as far as the word. Doesn't mean that Yah might not bless it later on. Now, many of us, if not all of us, did not necessarily go through this process, right? So obviously, we're asking Yah and through Holy Spirit to step in and help us in some of the ways and some of the things that we didn't have, and begin to institute these things that will work for us, right? Because even the Bible says, even if you have what might be considered to be a non-believing spouse, the believing spouse's behavior can be the very thing that has the non-believing spouse come into agreement with the word. How you doing, Brother Omar? So we're still doing our best to show the example, to lead by example, to love as Yah would love, to love as Yahashua would love, that they would see the discipline in us, and show that we can show them what it is to be Yahashua's disciples. But sex is marriage, marriage is sex, and we don't look at it that way, because in the world, people say don't have sex until you're married, even in the church, and we think that that means, therefore, sex and marriage is separate. Sex before marriage is fornication. Why? Because fornication, pornea, which is where we get the word pornography from. So pornography or fornication is any false image of marriage. That's what fornication is. Any false image of marriage. So so fornication can be when you're married. If you commit adultery, you still committed fornication. So technically, all adultery is fornication, but not all fornication is adultery. You feel me? Right? Like, if you have any false image of marriage, then it's pornography or pornea, or what you call fornication. Yeah, the devil did too well with perverting what we think about those things. How you doing, Sister Sheila? He says, so what are the steps for a man and a woman? So once again, we talked about the ones from birth. We kind of have some of them recorded. I mean, if you're looking for like, I mean, I don't know. So if somebody were approaching me, right? If two persons approach me, we've had this already. We've done marriages and stuff within SOC, and prayerfully we'll do a bunch more. Even for generations to come, that would be amazing. That being said, if two persons were to approach me and say, we want to be married, this is what I would ask. If you're saying letter of the law, right? Some of these things can't happen, unfortunately, because we're not prepared for them. Not just SOC, but Israel in general. We're not in a place where we got our stuff together. We're growing a nation. We got our land. We got our food. We have our, licensing, all that stuff together. We're private, not public, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of stuff that I would say in general, right? We who are followers of the way need to continue to get greater at. That being said, if you're talking about letter of the law, these are questions that I would ask. If somebody said, let's say I'm gonna make it. Well, I don't know. I can talk about either male or female. I'll deal with the male. Let's say there was a man came up to me. He said, "I see a woman. I want to be married to her." First things first, I would say is, are you prepared to take care of that woman? Do you have a vision already for your life? And is the vision so strong that you could take in the vision that she has for hers? That would be my first question. If a man approached me, right, and said that if it was a woman that approached me and said, hey, there's this guy I really like, this and that or whatever, I think he might, approach me if something and tell him I want to talk about marriage, I would say, all right, is this man, does he look like he's able to take care of you? And you have certain questions that you would ask him as far as the word. Does he believe, or even she, do they believe what you believe? Extremely important, right? Because in a lot of dating, we just kind of do this thing. Well, eventually somebody can change. They take over. I'll introduce it. No, does this person believe what you believe, or are they willing to be grafted in and leave whatever they are to become what you become? Because in our culture, we marry inside of Israel, right? Now, somebody before you get there, that means Israel by birth. That means Israel grafted in. That means Israel by belief. That means Israel by works. That means Israel by faith. Right? That means Israel by physical as well too. But you get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying with the grafting? So I would ask these questions up front. These are questions that you should have already up front. But if somebody were to ask me and wasn't sure where they should go with it, I would ask those questions. I would say, hey, what's their belief system? Hey, how much are they honoring it? Hey, um, what do they do as far as holy days? Right? Like I would ask those questions. Like, what is it? And I would tell the person, male or female, be careful once you start having these questions because I know as a male, and there are females that can tell me the same thing for them. I know as a male that you can be up there and you can be the most buttoned up. Hey, we're gonna wait till we marry this and that, but some persons they're gonna try to get you in the bed as soon as possible, right? And they're gonna act like the bed is what shows love. And my love, although my marital love, right, the out of the institution of marriage, the agreement through sexual activity that we shall have that staples us as a couple and unites us and says we are in this institution called marriage. That being said, even with that, I need to make sure that you recognize that that's going to catapult me to love you in other ways that are greater than anything that might happen in the bedroom, right? So there are certain things that I would just say right off the top, like if somebody were to approach me. Let's say all that was fine, all that went well. Then the next thing I would be is, who is your mother? Who is your father? Who is your spiritual father? Even who is your spiritual mother? If you don't have somebody like that still around or alive, who is somebody that you allow to help out with decision making for you, who you can trust, right? Because your mother and father or your group need to have a conversation with their mother and father in their group. They need to see if they can be accepted, right, by the bride's parents. The bride's parents need to see if they even accept your parents and you, right? And then you guys need to have a conversation, and you guys even need to talk about a dowry because yes, the daughter is extremely valuable. So what is it that you would give, right? Like when my son gets married, right, to whomever his wife shall be. We don't have any agreement or anything with anybody. We actually have some persons that might be in mind, but we haven't really had that conversation. That being said, though, when my son gets married, he's going to be, we're going to have to pay a dowry. We're going to. We're going to pay a dowry. Right? Once again, it can be different things. It doesn't have to be all the money in the world. I'm not saying I'm gonna have $500,000 to $1 million, something crazy like that, to be like, hey, for your daughter, I'll give blah blah. Right? My son might have to do work. I might have to do some work or something. We might have to do some extra things or whatever to help the family out. And there's still going to be family outside of it, but we should have that conversation because that's something that shows and proves the dedication that the son has to the wife. Right? I see you. Right? But I'm just saying, like, you hear what I'm saying? Like, those are things, there should be some things there that have to be proven, that you should show for it and prove from the beginning. Right? And so we'll prove those things, or see if it's something that we even think is something that might be too much. Because, if it's too much, and that's what the parents are doing, and the daughter's raised by the parents, there might be somebody that be asking too much of my son. Like, there are certain things that allow you to have conversations. Once that's done, then I would say you got to go then after that to some kind of community headship concerning marriage, right? Well, for us at SOC, I would more than likely bring you in front of myself and some of the elders or ministerial staff, and and we would have conversations. And if it worked out where everything was great, it would be two persons that are within SOC or are tied to SOC so closely that we know you. So we can talk about, oh yeah, like, yeah, we don't have any problem because we know both of them are straight, or hey, we might have a problem. Y'all might not know this, so and so. Like, hey, have you gotten such and such together? Like, nobody needs to know outside this room, but everybody who came in front of us, we might need to tell the truth about, yo, bruh, you a few months ago you was right. Like, how you go a few months ago to being kind of out there to this is the one and you forsaking all others. They sis, I mean, you was out here too, right? But even if the decision is made to go on with it, then after that, what you do is you have coaching. As the husband is preparing himself for his wife and the wife preparing herself for her husband, you still going through marital coaching. So you're still having conversations whole time. You're still having conversations and communication and making sure everybody's, thinking on the same page, on the same level. So, um, research does show that arranged marriages work and work longer. And the thing about, I'm not going to go deep into that because to each their own on that. The Bible doesn't say you have to have an arranged marriage. That being said, though, arranged marriages do last longer, but usually when you talk about arranged marriages, they come from context or from cultures to where persons already have very strict guidelines and don't come outside of them on what husbands, wives, and community ask for and what children should be, etc. So when two become one, that's why it's an institution. They're coming into this institution, but you've already been institutionalized through our institution. You were raised in our marriage. In a sense, put it like this: every marriage for us comes from us being institutionalized because we've already been raised by persons who are married into the institution of the kingdom. And those that are married into the institution of the kingdom, before we became husbands and wives to a physical person, were already all married and wives to the Most High God. So marriage is just a continuation for us of what we already do as an institution for those of us that are institutionalized through the word, right, and the will of Yah. We're already institutionalized. You see? So it's not a big deal for me to speak in these terms because I'm already institutionalized. I'm all in. I do this every day, all day. I'm not trying to do anything outside of it. Like, I'm married. I know what it is. I know that I'm married to the Most High first. I know I'm married to my wife, and everybody gets in where they fit in after that. And it's a beautiful thing because I find when those two marriages, right, that institution that I'm in, when me being institutionalized that kicks in, it allows me to help anybody else who must be institutionalized into the same community. Right. So my son, he being institutionalized too, he's being raised in an Israelite marriage. And he's going to therefore expect Israelite Israelite institutionalized thinking in his institution. When he joins the institution of Israelite marriage or kingdom marriage, if you will, he's going to expect things to go through the same institutionalized thought because he's seen the institution. Does that make sense? I know I'm saying institutionalized and institution a bunch, but prayerfully that makes sense, right? Like my son should expect certain things from his wife that he saw from his mom. Doesn't mean his husband, right? And he should expect certain things from himself that he saw from his dad. And it doesn't mean that his mom and dad are perfect, so there's certain things we have to get, but I'm just saying he's been institutionalized. He's being institutionalized. He should be. And persons don't like that because a lot of you think institutionalized is always negative. No, like there's an institution called marriage, and many persons go through many different things and try to call it marriage. No, we're in an institution. This thing is locked. This thing is there since Adam Ayazar. When Adam saw Eve, first thing he did was he gave himself a title. Right? His name is Adam. His name is man. Her name is Ayazar. As soon as he saw her, he gave him and her a title. He said, "For this cause shall a husband leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife." And anybody who's of Adam or of mankind, right, or out of womankind even, all of us should be what? Doing the same thing, institutionalized in the same manner. So whatever my son sees his father do, however my son sees his father handle situations, however my son sees his father, when my son will ask me sometimes about different things that are going on in life, or things that are going on, or why did you do this for mom, or this and that, or whatever, I break it down to them as far as the institution. I need him to be institutionalized, and I need him to do things at a greater clip or a greater level than I do. Right now, another part of the question that we got. This was a little bit of a doozy, but I can see what it is. So another part of the question that we got was about fallen angels, and that fallen angels have relationships with so-called white women, or I guess first of all you got to even ask, did they have relations? Did they take on the bodies of so-called white men or black men? And then after that, did they have relations with white women or black women? And then I think the next part of the question, if I'm not mistaken, was out of that. I think the next part was, is that one of the reasons why a lot of so-called black men are so interested in so-called white women? So that being said, um, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing at it because it's nervous laughter. I have to answer this extremely carefully. You guys already know what we feel about the whole black versus white, et cetera, right? That being said, if I want to just pragmatically answer, or just answer like from the jump, from the beginning, all right, let's just answer like this. Let's just answer. I'm not going to treat anybody like this as common sense, like your common sense. We treat this like you are malachi at malakachi, like this is kingdom sense, not common sense. Let's just deal with contextual facts that reveal truth. Um, Back before the flood, it's really difficult to deal with any kind of color, because the only person that we know the only person the Bible tells us is anything outside of what we would determine today to be black, and that we know that black, even color-wise, is not a monolith, so to speak. That being said, the only thing the Bible tells us about anybody having any kind of color issue is actually Noah. Noah, we don't know exactly how much so this affected him, but he was affected by albinoism. One of the reasons why his father, Lamech, didn't want anything to do with him. Or, right, if you read Jasher, you'll discover that Lamech, or Lamech, did not even raise Noah. It was actually Methuselah, his grandfather, who raised him. And Methuselah preached with them until basically right before the flood, a few weeks before the flood, when Methuselah's life is taken, so he doesn't have to see all the craziness that's about to happen on the earth. And but outside of him, we don't really know any color scheme. There are persons that might have a lot of different stuff. We can't find anywhere in the Word where it tells us that there were persons, evil persons with this color, and righteous persons weren't, or vice versa. We can't find anything about any family member or these persons. We know that there's some families that must have through maybe Noah's daughter-in-laws and stuff. We don't even know for sure, and possibly Noah's wife Nama, but we don't know for sure. But there's a possibility that there would be persons that would come into the ark through them. But outside of that, we really don't know anything color scheme wise of who would have been with what. So that part of it's not that difficult for me to answer off the jump. As far as, yeah, before the flood, we really don't have too much where it says these persons were this color, or these persons were this, or everybody, Noah's sons were this color, this color, this color. We don't necessarily have any evidence to go off of regarding that. Anything outside, anything that you would hear would have to really be not only opining or opinionated. It would really have to be something that somebody at some point made up, or if they didn't, they're going to have to really show us where they got it from, because we really don't see anything talked about in any scriptures, whether it be 66 books or otherwise, outside of Noah, right? And even with Noah, we don't know exactly how albino he was, but we know it was enough to where his father got scared, right? We know his eyes were different. We know that the skin more than likely was lighter. How much so, we don't know. That being said, right, those things being said, as far as our men and our brothers wanting to get with so-called white women all the time, which I believe, I hope you guys hear me this one, I have to be careful. I believe that to be problematic only when, all right, which unfortunately is why a lot of brothers do it. And I think even white women themselves should realize it's problematic too. I believe it's problematic when men are getting, when so-called black men are getting with so-called white women because they believe that it ups their status just because she's white. I also believe that it's a bad thing for a so-called white woman, really anybody of any race. We talked about this before, and who knows, they tried to kick us off here before when we talked like this, but we were literally saying anybody of any race who believes that the reason they're better is because they step outside of their race. I didn't say you can't. Hear what I'm saying? Anybody who has a belief system of any race that believes that getting with somebody outside of your race is the reason why you're better than your own race, you have mental health issues. Now we would say for us that's a lot of Willie Lynch in there too, but that's anybody. Anybody. If you were Asian, right, Korean, if you were Korean and said, you know, not just as a joke, but said, hey, you know, Korean women are really crazy and they're hard to get along with. That's why I don't mess with Korean women. That's why I mess with white women. We would say something wrong with you. If you have a preference, we can get into that conversation later. But if you have a preference, or even if you feel led by the Spirit, or if you meet somebody and you feel like, okay, I met this person and they just so happen to be Korean, they happen to be black, they happen to be white, whatever, but I met this person and this person's in the yacht. The more I'm around them, I want to see if this person, I think this person's a wife. I prayed about this person might be my wife. That's a whole different conversation. But there are a lot of persons where we've been taught, right, to think that way. I'm not saying everybody does, but let's be honest, it is something that's out there, right? So I'm going to tell you that I believe self-hate, right, probably has more to do with somebody, anybody, trying to step outside of their so-called race or whatever, and thinking that stepping outside the race, right, here's the whole thing. Stepping outside the race is what makes you better than your own race, or makes you better than anybody else, or makes you just as great, right? Like if you get a white girlfriend, I probably thought about this for like this for a couple of years of my life growing up. You know, I was a token and stuff, so I probably thought like this. I didn't think like that. I wouldn't think, but you know, what they call subconsciously. You know, but when somebody is constantly and consistently, you know, like if you think that because there's a lot of black men that think when I get with a white woman, things will be better and easier, and she's going to automatically be better than a black woman just because she's white. There's a mental health issue with that, right? And even if we're saying that there's certain sicknesses, so to speak, mental health sicknesses and stuff that maybe she doesn't go through, doesn't mean that it's better. You see what I'm saying? So I'll leave that part alone. But yeah, I think that has a lot more to do with it than anything else. Self-hatred, hating ourselves, not wanting to be Israel, not wanting to be so-called black. You know, one of the reasons I think that a lot of Hebrew Israelites, even with this new thing now where there's a bunch of Hebrew Israelites, a lot of persons who are posting why they don't want to be Hebrew Israelites anymore, I feel like a lot of it still has to do with self-hate. And until we go through a lot of stuff like PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, or the PTSD that we as a people have, or we have more conversation, yeah, they can believe they're more submissive, which is not 100% the case at all, right? Statistics show that, but that's what we say. And but you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of self-hate. There's a lot of, you know, that's ultimately what we're dealing with is trauma, and even especially as far as Israel. See, once again, Bala Amdachi, we don't want to talk about this, but remember that term Yehudi or Yehudie or Yehavada or Judah, right, or Jew. The Negro was considered to be a Jew, the Jew, right? It wasn't until the mid-1500s to where persons who were trying to make us slaves started saying that Africans should be called black and Jews, or Yehudi, should be called black as well. And anybody who said that they had any wealth or any kind of position or any way of getting finance or whatever, it was said that if you mentioned the term Yehudi or Yehavada or Judah, they would meet you in the street. Right? They were allowed to meet you in the street. They were allowed to slash you in your face. It was actually in the law that if you took a knife or something and slashed somebody's face because they tried to call themselves Yehudi or a Jew, and they were black, they were Negro, you were allowed to do so by law, right? Even though these persons were known as that for centuries before, but when you're trying to take on their characteristics, you're trying to take their money, and you're trying to appropriate, these we were people living outside of our own land. Once again, opening ourselves up to businesses and all this other stuff with everybody else, and then ended up allowing persons who hated us to be in a position to where now they could take over for us, right? So so this thing of self-hatred, it predates, well, actually I was going to say it predates chattel slavery, but that's the mid 1500s when that happened. You had to go back to the 1400s and even a little bit of the 1300s to see when chattel slavery started happening, just because of the fact you were so-called black or Negro. But Negro never used to mean black. And even when you go to places like Spain today, or Morocco even, which is right there, they touch each other, right? You can go from one place to the other. Um, Even in places like Spain today, moreno is what many of you would be called, brown. But negro is different. Matter of fact, they would not want to call you negro anymore. But moreno is different than negro. They would say you're brown. Even if you're extremely black, maybe somebody might say you're negro if you're like extremely black. But for the most part, they call you moreno, right? More brown. But they know who we be. Right, and that's why I was saying earlier, I forget what we were talking about, but I was saying, I think it was about the dates and time, but I was saying a lot of persons talk about, we have conversations that we forget the context. Over time, we lose the context of the conversation. So when somebody calls you Negro, you don't know that in the 1800s, during chattel slavery, right, 1834, that in a thesaurus, the Negro was considered to be the children of the Most High. So you don't hear everybody being called Negro. No problem, Aaron. Yeah. So in the 1800s, even, you don't hear a lot of, like, you an N-word, but not a Negro necessarily. And then what you saw was persons, if you notice, and look, I'm not speaking ill of our ancestor. I love me some James Baldwin. I love me some James Baldwin, right? I'm not talking about in a perverted manner, right? We know that the brother was dealing with LGBTQ plus stuff. I love me some James Baldwin, right? That being said, James Baldwin and others, and look at James Baldwin as far as the masculinity or lack thereof. What he's fighting for was fighting for the right to also not have to be as masculine. Love him, but let's be honest. Look at the move that starts being made talking about I'm not your Negro. Or some see people say I'm not a Negro, and then you start seeing the sign I am a man. But and even persons like Malcolm X, Minister Malcolm. Y'all know I love me some Malcolm, but let's be honest. Malcolm was out here telling you you shouldn't be a Negro, but a Negro, that's actually talking about your status. That's talking about your sovereignty. See, the Negro has a right to sovereignty. But if you look in a Black's Law Dictionary, what do they tell you? They tell you that the Negro is actually a false entity or a fake person or a non-human being. But the reality is the Negro has rights as the natural man. So as a natural man, I'm always a Negro. When it comes to American law, though, be careful about being a Negro because they changed it up to where the Negro has no rights. But when I'm in private, the Negro has not only rights, he has existence, he has a nation. He has a nation in Europe. He has nations in Europe. He has nations in West Africa. He has nations in Israel. He has nations in Kemet. He has nations in Kush. He has nations in South Africa. He has South America. South Africa too. He has nations in South America. He has nations in Central America. He has nations in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Georgia, in New York, in Illinois, right, in California. He has nations. He has land. He has a right to it. So what do? Instead of being lawful, you become what? Legal, and do something highly unlawful but legal, which is for you to say, well, we don't recognize their rights in the corporation. But as far as in the state, you better right the actual country, the real country, right, that before you made persons lowercase c citizens in the 14th Amendment on, we are the real Negro. And when you recognize, and you have to recognize me, or you have to recognize the Negro. See, watch this. The only, even when you're talking about, can I do it like this? Because the last question we had today was dealing with sovereignty, anyways. Excuse me. Or at least the last written question we had was dealing with sovereignty, right? So, um, you have to realize and recognize like this: either you're a thief or you're not. Let me help somebody today. When we're talking about this stuff, either you are a thief or you're not. If you have something, it's because it came through inheritance, right? You inherited it, or we can even say maybe contractually you received it, or you stole it. It's yours or it's not. We have any disagreement on that? Because what I'm going to say, we're not going to be on too much longer. But I'm going to just put it. I want to make sure, like, because we could people try to use this as a loophole. Either it belongs to you or it doesn't. Is that true? Is that a true statement? Right? Is that a true statement? If I have this phone, it's mine or it's not. I might be allowed to hold it. We can talk about that. But it's either mine or it's not. There is no, well, I mean, it could be yours, it could not. No, no. Like, you might think that I know what I owe. Either this is mine or it's not. Okay? All right. We got to have agreement. I just want to touch and agree. If somebody has a disagreement with that, let me know later in the chat or something like that, or whatever the case might be. But there is a reason why I'm saying that. What is the reason why I'm saying it's got to be yours or not? Well, because any land, even, you can call the land whatever you want, but any land that one has is either yours or it's not. You feel me? We can talk about this and that. See, this is why you'll hear persons even say stuff like, you'll hear certain of a particular type of hue and belief system, right? You'll hear them say certain things. What'd you say? Yeah, no such thing as halfway pregnant. Right. So persons of a certain hue and especially a certain belief system, right, will say, well, you guys are talking about this in America, but we want it fair and square. What they're saying is that we beat you in a fight for it. So they're saying that means we legally obtained it. No, you didn't legally obtain it. You stole it through fighting. Right? Like, you stole it from fighting, right? So I want you to catch this. It's yours or it's not. Even in the tax stuff or whatever, the person who are taxing you, we have to ask the question: is it theirs or is it not? Right? But you got to ask yourself: is it who is it? Right? Is it theirs or is it not? It's yours or it's not? Real talk. Real talk. Okay. So now that we got that, this is why I say that. Because basically, if something belonged to the Negro and you didn't get it through righteous means, then it's not yours. So one of the best things you do is you tell the Negro to hate being a Negro. Matter of fact, they keep telling you to switch up because you keep finding yourself in all these new names that they give you, and they have to keep changing who you are. Well, they don't have to admit to it. It's already admitted. Like I said, in the 1800s, we know that the Negro was still considered to be the children of the Most High. If you're a Negro, you're a child of the Most High. We don't have to go any further. Now, not all black, so-called black persons are Negroes. This is when nationality, nation building, nationality matters. Not everybody who's black is Negro. They started trying to call all black people Negroes back when they said, when they tried to hide that Negroes were Israelites. But we've been Israelites and we've been Negroes. What happened is they got you to do something which is done all the time, like we were talking about a few days ago, and writing those checks and writing on the dotted line, and you don't even know what that dotted line means. They got you to sign over to your straw man or to your artificial person. You were see, a lot of you think because you were born in a state that you're of the state, you're property of the state. No, right? You are a natural person. A lot of you think, like a lot of you will do this. You'll go, oh man, you know what? I wasn't born in America. Let's say, I don't know, I was born in Haiti. I was born in Jamaica. I was born in, I'm Puerto Rican, whatever, right? I'm Cubano. So I'm first generation born. My parents came over here from Cuba, and I'm first generation. That's what they'll say, right? I'm first generation because you were born here, so I'm an American. No, you're not. You're Cubano. So then, what did they come up with? No, 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 no. You're Cuban American. No, no, no. I'm either Cuban or I'm an American. If I only had a brain, yeah, I'm either Cuban or I'm an American, right? I'm not. But no, no, no. Dual citizen. Look, I do America Ghana thing, but I'm really neither. In private, I'm Israel. I'm Negro in private, right? I'm trying to help somebody because you've been taught something that doesn't make sense. You cannot be several nations. You can't be. How many nations? Look, all nations are in the bloodline according to Matthew chapter 1 and Luke chapter 3. All nations are in the bloodline that leads up to Yahshua HaMashiach, our Messiah, so that his blood can cover anyone who wants to be a follower of his will and wants to become what he becomes. But you still have to become Israel. You have to be grafted in. That's the truth. This is sovereignty 101. There's only one nation that you part, whichever one you're a part of. Now, if you want to get into the whole minutia of, okay, every once in a while I need to be able to learn how to kind of flow, and so I might use my little Ghanaian thing over here, I might use my Jamaican thing over here, I might use, okay, cool, cool, but technically you're only one. When you go before the Most High, everybody's got to be Israel to grab in. Israel must first be sealed, and then everybody of all tongues, kindreds, nations, etc. can come in, but that's only because you're part of this nation. And so you're only one, right? Does anybody even recall? Some of y'all be able to tell me the year on the dot. I think it's 1 or 2 years, obviously right next to each other. But most of y'all probably be able to tell me. Do anybody y'all even remember when you started saying you were African Americans? We started saying, and I have to say you first because I was just coming into existence, so I can't say I was saying it. But anybody remember when we started saying we were African Americans? Anybody recall? Because it's somewhat new. Does anybody remember when you first started saying, as a people, that you were African Americans? There's a year. There's a year that you started saying that you were African Americans. Matter of fact, I'm gonna double check just to make sure. Yep, there's a year that you started saying you were African Americans. Not even the '60s. After the '60s. More recent than that. So somebody said 88, 89, somebody said 96. So in between the '60s and in between 88, 89. I would say officially we started doing stuff on paper probably '84. Because Jesse Jackson ran for president. Did he run for president? Now somebody help me, please. I should know this. I don't. Jesse Jackson, did he run for president once or twice? And if he did, he ran in '84 and '88, or just '84? He ran once or twice. And by the way, they put him up there because it was going to be Reagan no matter what, so they figured they could put up whoever. But somebody help me out. I think it was he ran '84 and '88. Am I mistaken? Or what, did he just run once? It was the late '80s, so he only ran once. Only ran in '88. Because basically, the '80s, the beginning of the '80s is when you started even hearing such a term come out, and it didn't come from us. And when Jesse Jackson ran, that's basically when we started hearing African American, like from a presidential or so-called presidential place. So, so I can't remember. Y'all forgive me. That's a blind spot for me. 84, 88. I think it was. I think he ran it. Hold on, let me see. When did he run? When did Jesse Jackson run for president? Okay, yeah, he ran. Well, okay. I don't know if he became the official candidate both years, but he ran in 1984 and 88. So let's say 1984, he became the second African American to mount a nationwide presidential campaign. That's after Sherry, right? Sherry Chisholm. She was the first one, right? He finished the Democratic primary behind Walter Mondale and Gary Hart. 1988, he again ran for the Democratic nomination, finishing second to Michael Dukakis. Okay. I don't even really know Michael Dukakis like that. I know of him. All right. So, yeah. So he ran twice. That's when you saw the African American thing. That's when you saw that pop up for the first time. And it was, so I believe it was in 1980 was the first time they started trying to say we were African Americans. And that was the thing that, once again, you had just finished coming out of I'm not your Negro, and then you became black. Which you were these things already, but they started allowing yourself to call you these things, not realize and not telling you that they had written in law, okay, we'll let them call them black, themselves black, but in law we'll make sure we put on there black as an artificial person. The web says they started calling themselves 1830. Okay. I'm not saying that you didn't call yourself at all. I'm saying as far as it becoming a regular thing, but could have been. I know Afro-American is something that goes back to Malcolm X started trying to say that. So they could have been saying African-American before then. But I know as far as it becoming like a regular normalized thing, at least as far as some of the schools and stuff I've been to, they could have. But as far as it becoming a normalized thing, or became where, like, you know, as far as what I've seen, it being on like federal paperwork and all that stuff, I think you don't see that. I could be wrong. Once again, I wasn't alive all that time. But let me see. Me, me, become a legal identity. Yeah, see, it becomes weird because they try to do the whole, you know, like African Americans were legal citizens ratified in 1868, yada yada yada. They're talking about the 14th Amendment, but that's not the case because they weren't even called African Americans back then. So it's, yeah, I have to look it up. So I'll be careful with that. I'll just say for now, it wasn't something that was popularized until like about 1980 or so. You know, it's just like when they say Malcolm, what is it, Martin Luther King Jr.'s born day, and they say everybody celebrated his birthday or whatever, and you didn't, you know, it wasn't even 100% ratified in the United States, or at least it wasn't until 1992 or 1996, one of the two. So it's hard because they be like, oh yeah, African American, but like we weren't called African Americans back then. So he said, okay, so a serious question: is there a word that whites okay me? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, Aaron. Okay, you redoing it? Yeah. So but and how you doing, brother TJ? So yeah, so there's a lot of different things that we have going on with that. But what I'm saying, long story short, with that is that where was it? Oh yeah, nation. So we don't even know what to call ourselves, and we don't know where to go to look. But if we were to literally just say, look, like, and you'll never really see anybody do this, and it's hard. And to be honest, somebody would be coming for your life. That's why for me, I'm like private, you know, inward reparations before we just go to this place of thinking that they're going to give you true reparations. excuse me, true reparations, according to what the United Nations would say reparations is. We have to do this within ourselves. But if you were to look at this properly, you would realize that if it could be introduced properly, you introduce the Negro. The Negro was enslaved purposefully, and they had their stuff taken from them purposefully. They were actually enslaved from places like Africa and brought into Europe and brought over to the Americas purposefully, and they had their identity taken away and hidden from them purposefully. And so, if you want to talk about reparations, your reparations, at least by that, go back to the 1400s. Your reparations go back even into 1453, so where you have to talk about the doctrine of discovery. Like that means the Roman Catholic Church owes reparations, which, by the way, they will tell you. They just say that they weren't going to give it to you, but they'll tell you if you've ever been to George Washington kind of sort of done this too, but Georgetown University, right? If you know about Georgetown University, and Georgetown University, they came out and they gave, as America did through Clinton and other people do briefly here or there, but they won't give you nothing. They came out with an apology. They apologized. They said they were sorry for enslaving black folk. That's what they did. They were sorry for enslaving black folk, and they kind of gave forgive my language, they gave like a BS apology. And if you don't know why they gave it, it was because if you know about Georgetown University, it started off basically with like a few nuns before it was even a university. And the nuns were trying to figure out how they were going to be able to make it. They reached out to the Roman Catholic Church, seeing if they can get some kind of help financially. Roman Catholic Church said, "No, we're not in a position to help." So one of them happened to have a family who had some slaves, and was like, "Hey, in order for our nunnery to keep running, we need to make some money. Could you send some slaves over?" So they sent them a family, and they started trading and trading family members and breeding, you know, us and doing stuff like that till they got to a point where they had enough money that then they parlayed that into making a fortune that turned into Georgetown University. So that's why I say, like, you have to follow this stuff, because if you're only looking through modern lens, some of you might even go, well, Georgetown, that's where Allen Iverson played, and Dikembe Mutombo and Alonzo Mourning and Big John Thompson, and John Thompson III came right after that. And so it's like, no, it's built off of it's built off of the trading of your people, right? Um, and if you ever identify those people as the Negro, then somebody has to say, well, if we talk reparations, and that's clearly, that's not even that hard to identify. We're talking about Yehudi or Yahapata or the Jew. We know these persons were considered to be the Jew. We know they were being enslaved unlawfully and illegally. In the 1400s, the Roman Catholic Church had to come up with something to make it legal, and then we know that basically they started taking their land illegally in the 1500s. They wouldn't even allow themselves to call themselves what they were. And then they started trading them all over the place. We know we can go to St. Thomas and other places and see a whole lot more information about them. We know we can go all over the Caribbean really and see these people. We know we can go to Savannah, Georgia and see these people. We know we can go to North Carolina, South Carolina, and see these people. Like at a certain, we can go to Tennessee and see Native Americans who said they're married into these people. We know we can go to Oklahoma and see in the five favorite five favorite nations that these people are, in fact, still held with high regard as those people and hold that to be part of who they are. We know that the original word for Cherokee is Anakitawiya. And as we as Anakitawiya will tell you, that means that we are the people of Yah. There's also this Choctaw, our cousins, and they are the people who are of the skirts. They're the persons who also follow the word and the will of Yah. These are persons who came into this relationship with persons who were already coming over here, some of which will tell you that they actually came over through the Bering Strait and all that stuff and came over. So when we start getting into, a lot of these different conversations, it's actually not that difficult to see your sovereignty in your identity. And if you recall a couple of days ago, I said you have identity politics. Identity politics is everything. How you identify is who you are. And who you are talks about what you should inherit. And if we prove that who you are, through who you are, through proving who you are, we can also prove that somebody stole your inheritance. You see, like, it's not that difficult. If I can prove who you are, And we can show who you are. We can literally line this thing up, and we can line it not just only coming from the 1500s or the 1400s. I just showed you, really 1300s till now, but we can go from the 1300s back. And then once we get to this thing called the Bible, which many persons now have to start agreeing is very historical document, or is very much so a historical document. But then at a certain point, right? At a certain point, what are we doing? If I can show you that the same Torah that they say that they use, if we use it, and I can show you what we look like in it, if I can show you in the same Torah that they have that they call themselves Ashkenazi, well, Ashkenazi is not, are not the people. In the same Torah they have. So, but that's what I'm saying. It's going to have to come through a private means because these persons have illegally, they've stolen your birthright. They've stolen who you are. And they say that they're more deserving of what you're deserving of. And now when you come back into it, y'all told us already, it's not going to come through them. Just like he told Abraham, stop looking for Hagar, right? It's coming through Sarah. It's not going to come through them. You are Yahweh's wife. And you keep thinking that his word, his seed, and his promise are going to come through somebody else's loins. They're coming through us. And we're going to have to address things within ourselves and trust the process. Right? Not like Philadelphia, but we're going to trust the process wholly, right? And last things, because this is the last question I know that we had, but then it's really time up for us, but I'll see if anybody has brief questions that I can answer really briefly. But the last part, I didn't get to this part of the question, which was, if you change up, if you become sovereign, you're not kicked out the country because you're sovereign. When you become sovereign, what you're saying is that I'm still protected by the United States Corporation or United States of America and the Constitution. You're saying that I want to be protected as a sovereign. I want to be protected as a private sovereign rather than a public citizen. Okay? So if you're going to do your stuff, if you're looking at getting your paperwork done, if you want to go further, if you want to call me about it, but you've been like, I know we had some, apparently I had missed that question from a while ago. So if you're trying to become sovereign, don't worry about your sovereignty. Like, your sovereignty doesn't mean you get kicked out, right? Your sovereignty means that you are looked at through a private lens. And like we even said before, your sovereignty is not just your paperwork alone. Like, even when you get your sovereignty, like if you change your position and become sovereign, even if you were to get your birth certificate, not your birth certificate, your passport changed, your passport will still say United States of America on it. And I think, what is it, number 5 or number 6 or whatever. But when they scan it, you will be private. But you're still saying I want to be protected, but that's law. Remember, if you go back and look at old DS-11 forms, or even if you look at the one you have now, there's a chunk of it missing at the top. On the old ones, you used to be able to check off, is this for non-citizen national, right? If you're trying to be private, blah, blah. You could check off certain things that you wanted. Nowadays, they just try to get everybody to fill it out the same way. And even though it says in the spot you're not supposed to write in or sign until you sign, if you read in there, it tells you that this is for you to become this is for you to be a citizen or a non-citizen national. A non-citizen national is basically one saying, I am like my nationality is one that is protected, even if I don't want to be a citizen. Right? Right? Like, somebody can come from another country and they can come over here and they can say, I want to be, they'll actually refer to themselves as non-citizen national. And so what they'll become is they'll go and they'll become non-citizen national. When you become non-citizen national, you're not even getting taxed because your money goes back to your nation, or the record of it should go to your nation. So your nation should be the one to tax you. So if we ever identified and came together, and that's why even at some point down the road, I've told you SOC will at least become officially, we're not ready for it yet, but at some point down the road, one of our goals is to become officially recognized as a nation. But then also too, that means we have to be way before that. Our main goal, well, not our main, one of our goals that'll be coming up hopefully in the next couple of years even, is to become a religion. Right? Once you become a religion, you can actually start separating a lot of things a lot easier. So sovereignty will actually be a lot easier for those who actually come through, take all the required teachings and stuff that we're going to start doing soon and all that. And right, because once you become a member, then you're going to become a member of. Now, once again, I know that people don't like the religion thing, so you don't have to. But I'm saying you will be authorized to. It'll help you with your sovereignty. And then down the road, when we combine that with the land that we have, people start living on it. What happens is now, oh, that's sovereign land. Why? Because that's a religious land. It's like if somebody gets in trouble, somebody can run into a church, right? In a lot of places, including the United States of America, I believe. But you can run into a lot of churches around the world, and they can't arrest you. Why? Because you crossed into a sovereign place. That's why with Roman Catholicism, all the bad things that you hear about them doing to children or adults or whatever the case might be, um, you can't really do anything to the priest. Why? Because the priest is actually on sovereign land. So we have to be careful as far as what we allow in the mindset. That's what I'm saying. We're coming up with some things that easily, even like when it comes to sovereignty, people can learn how to use it to do negative things with. We have to be very careful. We have to build a nation and build it up here first. That's the main goal. You said, y'all grab Ezekiel Lot. Samson's locks were cut. We got to study. That's right. You say you Cherokee white and Blackfoot, but looked at as white. It's so curious. Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, he's not on today, I don't think, but Brother Joe in Georgia. You would look at him, and more than likely, you would think of him as being white. He's Meluncheon. If you know about Meluncheon, that's basically like what Abraham Lincoln was. Even though Abraham Lincoln didn't like himself or like us. But I'm over time. The 4 minutes over time as far as the Q&A normally would go. We sometimes do go a little bit longer on Q&A days. So if there are questions, comments, or concerns that I can try to answer quickly, I can try to do so. If not, thank you for being on with us. And we'll get back to our Genesis series, Barashayat series we've been doing. I believe we're in Genesis 27 starting tomorrow. So, and we don't have a meeting tonight. We're going to move it to tomorrow evening, and it's going to be like a watch party. Or actually, excuse me, we're going to move it to Saturday. So we usually would have a Thursday night meeting. We're going to actually move our Zoom meeting to Saturday. There'll be brief stuff that it will be a watch party, which means since we can't always have the watch party on Zoom, we'll have it on Clapper. So if you're able to join us through Clapper, please join us. I'll try to see if we can possibly have it on Kofi for the original channel on TikTok as well. But just in case they try to block that for some reason, we can do Clapper. So we'll put that announcement out that normally we would have it, but we're going to have our next watch party. Also, too, we haven't really been discussing it, especially because I've been dealing with some stuff. We're still trying to do no added sugars. And this actually means we've been going, for those who've been faithful to it, we're going on like 2 weeks. We're going to try and do it a little while longer. No added sugars, if we can. All right? So, thank you all. I haven't forgotten. I just haven't been in front of you as much the last couple of weeks. Don't forget also, too, those that are coming to us next week, DC, Thursday, we should have persons arriving. We don't know for sure if we're going to try to do something Thursday evening, meet up or not. But Friday, we'd like to see everybody. Saturday, Sunday, we'd like to see everybody for what we have scheduled already. So hopefully we'll see those who are able to make it, those who are able to make it in attendance. And we're looking forward to relaxing and seeing things with you guys and having the babies get a chance to see each other again and all that great stuff. But thank you all. Tada. Also, too, don't forget, June 1st is fast approaching, so those who are going to be trying to converge to Philly, whether you're able to make it or not, I'm going to have you guys on the same text string, so you just have to deal with it. I'm sorry for a couple weeks or so, but I'll make sure that we send as much information to everybody as far as where we're meeting, how we're meeting, and those who were trying to help with hotel information, all those things. We're looking forward to getting all those things done ASAP. So that'll be DC for Memorial Day weekend, the 22nd to the 25th, and then the weekend of June 1st, probably something on May 31st and June 1st, but that last weekend or the following weekend, we'll be trying to get over to Philly. All right, we still are looking at trying to do our holy days in a couple different places. So we are going to try to possibly do something Midwest-ish or maybe North Midwest-ish to try and see if we can. It depends on travel, but we're looking at like the end of September and the beginning of October for Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. So Day of Atonement more than likely will be in Texas. So so that because Day of Atonement is like only a few days before Feast of Tabernacles. So we'll try to see if we can maybe get over to Texas for Day of Atonement. I think that's like October 1st. So we'll probably try to do something really nice and stuff. It is a somber day and everything, but we'll try to see maybe we can spend some time with each other on October 1st and try to reach out to everybody. I'll try to be better about getting an actual place in order. Now that I see how big all those places in Texas actually are, I didn't realize. Like I thought when y'all said like, oh yeah, it's just Fort Worth, Houston, Dallas. I thought y'all were talking about like when they say DMV. When they say DMV, I feel like I could throw a rock and go from Maryland through DC into Virginia. But y'all are like hours. So we're gonna try and see if we can get a location together and a spot, maybe even a hotel or something like that together, just so we can make sure that we have a spot, at least an area to meet up with, and we can do that together. Of course, we'll do it virtually. But the other one, more than likely, I can't say it's locked in yet. But more than likely, we're gonna try a lot of travel, but we're gonna try to see if maybe we can get to the Detroit area. I think we haven't done Detroit in a couple of years, right? Or at least not officially. So you see, maybe we can get to the Detroit area at the end of September for the Feast of Trumpets. So those that are in the Shy or close to it, I think that's what, like 6 hours away from the D. And those in Ohio who might be like a couple hours away from the D, something like that, we might be able to converge on that spot. Maybe those, I know this is getting further in, well, we'll just put it out there. So if you want to, let us know. Keep us in prayer. We finally got our stuff together where we finally were able to get everything together for the RV. So hopefully we'll be able to get that housed today, which means that probably today, tomorrow, maybe even today, but probably tomorrow or Saturday or maybe Sunday on Family Day, who knows, we'll start making our way back up north so that we can be ready to touch down at the house and come right back down to DC and say hello everybody, and then get ready to go to the house for a hot second to then go all the way back up to Philly. And after that, by the way, in Philly in June 1st, we're looking at possibly going further up so that we can try to get, closer to you guys. We might even go further past New York City and go like closer to like Connecticut and stuff like that over there. So it's a lot of moving parts for the next couple of weeks, and then after that, we're gonna take care of land a lot more and not move around as much. And in the process of that, I'm gonna try and stay in connection. So y'all just look for these group texts and stuff that's coming out. I'm not sure if we're going North Carolina up, so like what, the 85 up through there, or we're gonna go through Tennessee because we were gonna try and see some cats in Tennessee and we couldn't see them because we were running behind. So I'm not sure, but in some way, shape, or form, even if because it's gonna be a lot moving. Because even when we see you guys way up north, if we're able to get all the way up to Connecticut, then we gotta immediately come all the way back down to Florida before we finally can take our break. So we're we're moving. And just keep us in prayer. Love you all. I hope you got something out of today. I didn't see any other questions pop up. Yeah, Feast of Tabernacles is set as far as the dates. We are going to start, I guess, giving information. The price range and price points for everything as far as donations are going to be the same. They were looking at, I don't know, it's supposed to be more persons showing up. So if more persons are showing up this year, then we're not worried about, we'll see. It's basically supposed to be the same price point or price range. And we have more space, we have more land this time to execute on. We pretty much have everything blocked off except for one little section for like 1 or 2 days. So we pretty much have everything locked down, and everybody will have plenty of space. Everything's on one flat surface this year. And we're right next to the bathroom like we were a couple years ago for those who, have different issues with, the hills and all that stuff. So everything's there, gated area, so we're secure, all that stuff. So we took care of that, especially since we had the situation we had last year. We made sure we took care of that much, much earlier so there was no confusion this time. So that'll be October the 6th through the 13th. I believe, I don't remember when the Feast of Trumpets is on top of my head. Feast of Trumpets is at the end of September, September 20, if I'm guessing, if I were to guess, usually as far as the dates how they go, I would think it's like September 27th or something like that. Is the Feast of Trumpets. That's the one we're trying to see if we can do in the D in Detroit. Um, October the 1st is the Day of Atonement. That's the one we're going to try to do in either Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, Grand Prairie, whatever's over there. We're going to try and find a place where everybody can meet up and put that out early so everybody can already be ready for that and be ready for whatever travelers they need to do. And then October 6th through October the 13th is the Feast of Tabernacles. So October 6th through October the 13th is the Feast of Tabernacles. So so that's what we need to have prepared for that. And we're going to have a couple differences as far as food, because since we have so much land in so many spots, what we've been doing is we just had a few, well, really one brother and what, 2 to 3 sisters that were doing all the cooking, and it kind of got really really huge a lot last time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually have assignments for maybe one person to do like major meals. So persons who want to like do the major meals, they can be in charge of it and have help. But outside of that, everybody will have their own areas. That means you have your own, fires and grills, and the grills they put them over the lower fires, and if you want to bring even some of your own stuff to even do stuff on top of that. So we'll have it set up to where persons can actually take care of their food in their areas, right? But then we'll have we'll probably come together for like our dinner or something like that in the evening, to where we all still fellowship, but we'll have, we'll still be doing stuff. So we're looking at being a lot more locked in, a lot more focused, a lot more live sessions, a lot more this, a lot more that. We kind of had a lot of things that were working against us last time, but we want to be more focused on what we were doing. And so we'll get you guys information on those prices. I believe if they're the same that they were, then the prices, I believe, or the donation prices, they went like this. I believe it was, if you're coming 1 to 2 days, I believe that the donation we asked for is 300. If you're coming, and this isn't until October the 6th, so we probably won't be asking for these things until August, as far as any donations you're giving, as far as needing to have at least a portion of it. But I believe it goes like October. I believe it's if you're coming for 1 to 2, whenever you come. It doesn't mean you come just the first or the second day. It's just if you come a combination of whenever you come. If you come 1 to 2 days, I think we ask for $300 donation. If you come 3 to 4 days, we ask for 350. If you come 5 to 6 days, we ask for 400. And if you come 7 to 8 days, we ask for 450. And if I be honest with you, at this time, sometimes in times past, it's been because we needed whatever. Um, it helps us with food, but also, if I be honest with you, just being completely honest, Elder Alma and myself, we actually took care of the prices. We actually paid for everything already. So if you do help, we will receive a little bit back, just to let you know. We won't receive the whole thing, but we will receive a little bit back, because we did it when SOC couldn't step up and do it. So most of it, I'm still going to give a certain amount to SOC for basically tithe, right? But then also too, there are some things that we will be getting back, just to make that clear, let that be known. Okay, so I think we're getting back half or something that we gave or something like that, because that was supposed to be the deal anyways. But that'll be Feast of Trumpet. Okay, sorry. So Feast of Trumpets is the 22nd. So then I might be too. I might be off. I might be giving last year's dates. No, October 1st was Feast of Trumpets last year. I might be giving. Yeah, I have to double check. Thank you for looking that up. So Feast of Trumpets is the 22nd. So the 22nd, by the way, is what? What is the 22nd? Give me a second. The 22nd is September 22nd is a Monday. Yeah, so maybe we can do something Saturday, Sunday, and then meet up again on that Monday or something like that, and give people a chance that they can take that day off or something. They can have a chance. But yeah, so if you're in the Texas, that area, I know Austin's like 2 hours away from that area, from Houston as well, something like that. So if you're in that area, you'll be getting some messages from us pretty soon, and we'll be trying to get some stuff together. We'll try to come up with a place, and those who are coming virtually, of course, you can always come virtual. You said where the feast of September 22nd would be in Texas. Um, I believe October 1st, somewhere around October 1st. I have to double check, but when that, the Day of Atonement. No. Sorry, Feast of Trumpets is going to be in Detroit. More than likely, that's what we're shooting for. So Feast of Trumpets will be in Detroit, the 22nd of September 22nd. Somewhere around October 1st is the Day of Atonement. We're looking at doing that in Texas. And then October 6th to the 13th is the Feast of Trumpets. That will be in Georgia, in campgrounds. Red Red Top Mountain State Park. And there's campgrounds that we have there that we use that are inside that are dark and gated. So I don't know. I was told it's not glamping because glamping apparently is when you're actually just inside like a little hotel room outside. So I guess it's not glamping. To me, it's not camping. I mean, it kind of is, I guess. I don't know. I guess it's camping. We have electricity and everything. We have lights and we have stuff like that. And we got plenty of all the extra stuff that we bring, period. But yeah, so October 6th to the 13th, that'll be in Georgia, Red Top Mountain State Park. Yeah, Red Top Mountain State Park, and that'll be October 6th to the 13th. And it's a really nice spot. There are if you have a thing about animals, there are deer, and there's like squirrels and rabbits and stuff like that. Um, there are no bears or anything that are in that area. There are bears, but to be honest, there's bears in Georgia, but there's no bears or anything like that. We will be, and we actually are on one where the way it works is you come in through the gate, and basically the gate is closed behind you. We have security because we literally have the state troop or the park police are literally right across the way. When you come inside, there's always a couple persons who are, who volunteer and basically stay there for 2 weeks at a time, and they can help with any questions you have. You have bathrooms all over the place. You have two places for washers and dryers, and then you actually have there's two rivers that meet there that both eventually make their way into the ocean, but both of them basic the two rivers that meet basically they surround us. If you saw the pictures where we did, even though they usually are only shown from one angle, but if you see the pictures that we do during the shout out, and it shows the baptism, the baptism is done right there in those rivers, and it literally, so you have like a peninsula that you're in. So we have like it's kind of, I mean, there's other persons that will be there, and actually, even though they're usually going to be Jewish, they're actually usually there for Feast of Tabernacles as well. But we'll be there, Feast of Tabernacles. We'll have a little bit of stuff there for persons to, make sure that they're there. We'll have at least one RV, maybe two this year, and if we do, we'll make sure that those RVs are in places and always, got electricity going. We can have place that we need to go or get inside. Also, too, I think it's 5 to 10 minutes away from medical response. If we need to get somebody where we need to. So yeah, but it's a really nice place. A lot of stuff for the children to do. All the children that have ever come, they've always been excited and thankful. We didn't get a chance to see some of them last year, so we're praying this year. We're always praying for a bunch of babies, but this year, who knows? Maybe we can have like 20 babies or so with all the adults and everything, and running around having fun. But I know that they enjoy the places that are there. We do fishing there, all types of stuff. So we'll have more information. But we had a lot of stuff last year, but it was just we had like issues with people who were when we were supposed to do like 4 days outside of it. They messed up our stuff, so we ended up having to pay extra for 4 days outside of something, and then we were able to come in 4 days, and the 4 days before we could get on the land, it was like, forgive me, I'm not Republican, Democrat, but it was like Trump City, so they was calling police on us left and right. The police came out and said they couldn't do anything, and they were still calling the people that was in charge of the house. The people in charge of the house was like, hey, I'm sorry, but it's getting crazy for me over here. It was whole. So we made sure before any of that could even become a thing, we didn't deal with that the year before. We got all that together. So it is what it is. but anyways, but we'll be there October 6th to the 13th. We're gonna try and change up a few things as far as um, as far as transportation for those that are flying in. We're gonna have to work things slightly different to where even if we have to just raise a little bit more funds to make sure you can get to and from back, because it's the last couple of times we've offered it, it's for whatever reason we've had issues with it, and especially even with just Feast of Tabernacles, the traffic to get you guys to the airport, that Georgia airport that you go into is the big one, the biggest one in the world. That airport, when you start trying to go back and forth in that traffic, sometimes there's no guarantee on how long it's going to take. So I know we have people, persons that are traveling, including our ones that getting you guys to and from. Some of us will fall asleep. That's too dangerous. So we're gonna have to look at that for safety reasons, if for nothing else, and look at that for just making sure we know guaranteed everybody can make it. We'll have to look at some of that stuff early, but I believe we should be fine. If we have to, we can raise some funds, and if we raise some funds to get you guys there, we'll just make sure everybody we know what days you're coming in and coming out. We had one brother came in from Puerto Rico or whatever. We were able to get him to and from, but it was just a lot. So, but thank you, appreciate you. Your production was on deck. I'm but appreciate y'all. Appreciate, love you. Thank you for being on. I'll get you more information regarding that. Hopefully the Q&A made sense. And we honor you all. And thank you even for the questions, even for the ones that are difficult, tough to answer, whatever. Keep them coming. Like I said, if there's further conversation you guys would like to have about a couple things or whatever, I was about what we talked about at first. The main thing I was just trying to get across is that you should, at least on my end, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad about getting the word. If you're getting the word, you're doing whatever, when it comes to SOC and SOC family, as long as we're doing what we're supposed to for one another. I mean, I'm not the type of person that's like, you can't listen to Pastor so-and-so, or you can't listen to Apostle so-and-so, or you can't listen to whomever. Like, I just ask that you make sure you're staying righteous. But thank you all. Thank you for attending today. Appreciate you all. Love you all to life. Hopefully we got the ones. We had so many written questions today, I couldn't really get to the other ones. But let me ask this before we take our lead. Did you guys feel, because I pretty much only got to written questions and then persons who had questions about written questions today, did you guys feel like we answered the questions for the most part, or are you guys like, hey, you wish you had more time so that we could have answered some of the ones that weren't written? Like, you guys, because if so, we can try to see about maybe doing a little bit more of this tomorrow. But did we get to, it seems like we got to the majority of what everybody was asking, but I don't want to just assume. Well, we've lost a bunch of persons too, and we got a few of us left now. Well, I don't know. You guys think about it, pray about it. If you guys feel like there's more stuff that we could have covered or whatever, let me know tomorrow, and I'll be prepared if necessary to go in and out of Q&A a little bit. All right. So love you all to life. You all take care. Thank you so much for being on once again. We're gonna go ahead and do the shout out real quick. If you've never done a shout out, just look at what your neighbor begins to do on the screen. Other than that, thank you again. Appreciate you. Appreciate, love you. We shall hopefully talk to you guys later on today, and hopefully you enjoyed once again what the Most High gave us. We appreciate you all. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until we have the time and opportunity to come before you all again, please remember, as always, beloved, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Take care. Talk to you soon.